caveat here. So this is our general schedule today. What I believe is that this is shorter than the time that we have allotted. Now, I say that, we'll see what happens. Hopefully we can give you some time back. Everybody could use some time back, I believe. So we'll kind of play it by ear a little bit. We'll try to take that break right around that time so everybody can get up and stretch and walk around a little bit. We'll see where it falls in the presentation today. Here is a list of a lot of people. Not everybody that helps us with this project, or these projects, I should say, is on the list. But in general, here we are. As always, Trudy and I can answer a lot of questions about just about everything. Our knowledge covers all areas, but it's always not as specific as some of our other specialists or people in specific areas. But if you let us know if you have questions, we will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Maggie Sis does all things data. So if you have data questions, she's the one you want to go to. Sharon Heater is our liaison from the special education office, helps us a lot with both accommodations and the alternate assessment especially, but just about everything in assessment world she's helping us out with. And so the alternate assessment, definitely accommodations, she can definitely help you with a lot of those questions. Allison Olson is our Title III Director, ELPA 21 Coordinator. If you have ELPA 21 questions, they should be directed towards her, because she has definitely the most information of any of us about ELPA 21. ACT on-site liaison, ACT questions definitely should go to Iris. Don't send them to me. I'm just going to forward you to Iris anyway. So if you have questions in that area, those are probably for her. Ali Martinez Wilkinson is going to be all things professional learning. If it's details about map growth and some of those types of things, she's been in the districts more recently than others of us, and so I might send those her way too. Rhonda True is our enhanced assessment grant coordinator, and she's taking care of NAEP duties right now. We have some exciting news on the grant area that we get to share today, and so we're excited about that. And then Tyrina and Stacy, our office associates, have a broad set of knowledge and can help you find whatever you need and get you to where you the right person if you don't know who that is. So that's kind of our team. Of course, we have I should probably thank others in the department, our content specialist Deborah Monick, Marissa Payzant, and Audrey Webb, sorry. And then our academic officer, Corey Epler, as well. Also probably Lane Carr, because I've made him do a lot of work here recently, although he's making me talk about accountability today. So we probably owe each other a couple of those anyway. As always today, just a couple of housekeeping pieces. If you have questions that you want to throw into the chat, please do so. The staff is going to put in some links as we talk about different sources today, or different resources today, and they will try to answer those questions. Trudy has question duty today. If she thinks it's something that needs to be interrupted, the presenter, she's going to interrupt and answer those questions as we come across them. Otherwise, we'll wait towards the end. So we'll try to do it that way. We have question time at the end, and we should have plenty of time to get to all of your questions today. And for those things that we actually have actual answers for right now, right? Some things we might not have all the answers. Very good. Okay. So I think we're ready to get started with actual information. Here we go. So I gotta quit doing that. So once again, there's our agenda for today. We are going to try to make that break happen right around that point. We'll see where it falls within everything. And we are likely to be shorter, like I said, than the time that it says there. We should be out before noon, but we'll have to see, since this is the first time we've done this information all together. Okay, so we're going to start out with this year's statewide assessment and accountability plan. Usually I don't put it that way, but because of all of the changes, chaos, whatever you want to say, brought on by COVID, I think that's the best way to put it. This is our plan right now. I can't say this enough, that this is our plan right now. We'll see what spring looks like. I think overall, we've been doing pretty well in the state about keeping classrooms open and having many students in person, but we also know that that's different all over the state, and that it could change at any minute. If you saw UNMC's announcements over this week, you know that there's still a lot of worry about where we are with COVID. We're still all adjusting, and we'll continue to adjust. Like I said, this is our plan, and the best we have right now. And if things happen, we'll adjust to them as we go forward. So I think to start out with, I'd like to mention the fact, so this summer we put together the Launch Nebraska resources. Was one of the resources was specifically around assessment, and we continue to support this, right? So in general, focusing on needs of the classroom and of the students. What did students missed? What did students miss? Focusing on assessments that provide good instructional information, whether that's map growth, whether that's common district assessments, whether that's classroom assessments. We think that's where your energy should be as much as possible, right? Understanding that we have a lot of mandates, we have a lot of things that we have to do, but we've tried to support that as best we can, get out of your way as much as we can, and have you focus on those results and that information, because that's where definitely where we need to spend the bulk of our time, especially in this year. So all these are guides that guiding principles that we put out at the beginning of the year. We also kind of for ourselves, as we were making decisions at the department around assessment, we were trying to make sure that we were making decisions that support districts, right? So leveraging assessments, like I just said, that provide data and inform teaching and learning. Assist with the transition to or through your adaptive summative assessment. With talking with the commissioner, he was very clear that moving forward was a priority, not necessarily looking back. So we have a new direction that we wanted to go, and making sure that we continue to make our way in that direction. And also allows for the related research around COVID. We've been trying to think about that a great deal, trying to make sure that we get the right information, so that we can make sure that we understand the impacts from COVID, so we learn some lessons about all of this as we move forward. Yeah, so just I want to come back and highlight these again, because there's going to be a lot of resources that are going to come out right now. One of the things about pivoting and trying to do different things is it takes a while to create quality resources to put out to you, right? It can't happen immediately. So I'm gonna focus here for just a second. We do have a series of science 5th and 8th grade formative assessments. There's probably should say science in that line somewhere, but those science. So instead of writing additional summative content this summer, we brought in teachers, the teachers that would normally come in and do summative resources. We actually had them create formative classroom tasks. Those are very near completion. We're doing some final edits on them right now, and they should be coming out soon. As soon as they are ready, we will be sending those out. You're free to use them however you want, making sure that they're in science teachers' hands. If you find them quality and you want them to use them, like we said, we used a lot of we used a lot of practices that we typically use in the development of quality summative tasks, and we used the same teachers and a lot of the same principles. So those should be fairly similar to what you would see on the science field test this year. And so we hope that they are very helpful in informing your teachers where the students are, giving good examples of what those might look like. We have a little more freedom with classroom type of tasks because we don't have the same constraints that we do in the summative about having everything be computer scored and those types of things. But there are, and I should say, it's not just a task. There's rubrics, there's additional instructional pieces. We tried to make it a whole package of the tasks be a whole package for your teachers. On the alternate side of things, the alternate assessment side of things, we also worked on extended science indicators for non-tested grades. A lot of times we only do extended standards for the grades tested. We thought that this was probably necessary with the new three-dimensional science standards, even ones that are extended, that it would be better to see a progression. And so we spent some time, we brought once again, teachers in to help us create those extended science indicators for those non-tested grades. And then so that they're out there for teachers that work with students that qualify for the alternate assessment. We also worked on extended or instructional clarifications for extended science indicators. One of the areas that doesn't always get a lot of support simply because it's so few numbers and percentages across the state is the work around those extended indicators with students that qualify for the alternate test. And so we previously in the previous set of standards we had created instructional clarification. So we started with science to create those extended indicators. They have instructional supports there and suggestions for teachers about how they might go about teaching that material and assessing that material to some extent for the alternate extended indicators. So those are two pieces specifically around alternate assessment or students that qualify for the alternate assessment. And then, of course, and this wasn't everybody's first choice, but this ended up being the best choice. We did have some money that we were able to save from last year since we didn't have assessment, and we paid for map growth in grades K through 2 and 9 through 10. Hopefully, if you had a contract already with NWA, that's been updated and you saved some financial resources and you're able to divert those in other areas. Remind you that is for this year only. That is, right now we don't have the money to do that again next year. We're looking for that money, but we don't have it right now. So don't spend that money next year unless we tell you otherwise. And so those were some of the things that we tried to do to support districts as we went forward this year. So that information is there. We also sent out information about our plan around specifically NSCAS General and ELA and mathematics. We sent that in Okay, yeah. So I'm sorry, Bethany. Let me. All of these things, except for the last bullet, are not quite ready. We will, when they are ready, we will send those out to you, and you will let you know. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the extended indicators for non-tested grades are not quite ready. All of this material is almost to the point where we're ready to start releasing it. I wanted to highlight it again so that you knew that it was coming. Look forward in your DAC emails. We'll let you know when it comes out. Please let those people, those teachers that work with students that qualify for the alternate, those science teachers, if those things can help them, and you're okay with it as far as what you're doing with your curriculum in your district, please make sure that they get those in their hands. We know that some places the teachers themselves make those curriculum decisions, and some places that might be a curriculum office. Please look through them. If they're up to your expectations, let others know that they're there so that people get to use them. Thanks for that question, Bethany. So we did send out the DAC update that kind of highlighted what our plan was specifically around the NSCAS general. That's where most of the changes are this year. But I think it's worth the time to go over that information again, because it is a pretty big change. We want everybody to be clear about what that change is for this year. And so we'll do that here quickly. Here's just a chart that kind of goes over all of the information so you can kind of see where we are for the year. With all the statewide summative tests, ALPA 21, we believe is going to be a standard administration for the year. We have the time, the testing window on other slides here coming up for that. NSCAS ACT in the spring, we believe will be a standard administration. We'll cover that in more detail here in a couple minutes. NSCAS alternate, once again, we think that is standard administration for both ELA and math. So that'll take about the typical time that they do at this point in time. NSCAS alternate, so and then NSCAS general for science, right? So last year we were supposed to do census field test. Census in this case means all students are involved. It's not optional, it is required. And so all students in grades 5 and 8, and then high school for the alternate are expected to take that census field test this year. We moved it just from last spring to this coming spring. We looked at some other options, but ultimately this is what we thought was going to work the best and was possible to make that happen. Obviously, the impacts of not having testing last year have just pushed that back a year. Yep, Melanie, we are going to come to remote learners, and I apologize for not answering your question earlier. I have a whole slide on talking about those pieces earlier. High school alternate is only third-year cohort students, right? So for high school, we test third-year cohort students. They either take the ACT or they take the alternate, and it's only that third-year cohort students. And we'll come to the remote learners here in a little bit. And then, so the part that we're going to cover immediately is the NSCAS general. So really, in most places, you're going to see language change for a lot of our resources this year, from NSCAS general to NSCAS phase 1 pilot. And anytime you see that phase 1 pilot, we're really talking about NSCAS general, ELA, and mathematics, right? So for the bulk of our students in grades 3 through 8, in mathematics and ELA, we're doing a phase 1 pilot instead of the NSCAS general. We tried to highlight that as a difference because it is not a summative test, and I'll kind of cover what it actually is right now. And probably could get rid of that slide. Okay, so the phase 1 pilot for both ELA and mathematics is a 35 item test. That is shorter than the test we've been using the last couple of years. So it's 35 items. 23 of those items are based on the table of specifications that is out on our pages right now. And it covers the entire table of specifications, right? So all of the indicators could be tested. For 23 items, it depends on, not every indicator might be tested for every student, but every indicator is eligible to be tested for every student. And it's based off of percentages, right? So if there was 25% of the items, and I just made these numbers up, right? So if 25% were in vocabulary, 50% of the items were in reading comprehension, and 25% in writing skills, those percentages still apply to these 23 items, right? This is information we've already emailed, yes. I'm just covering it again to make sure everybody's on the same page. Yeah, this isn't new. We already sent this out. I'm just covering it again to make sure we're all on the same page. So we're all good. This is fully adaptive at grade level. So all 23 items are fully adaptive. If students are getting questions right, they're going to get harder questions. If they're getting questions wrong, they're going to get easier questions, but they all stay at grade level. So it should meet students better where they are. In the past couple of years, we've been partially and then more adaptive. Some of those times we had linking studies and those pieces in place, but all 23 items that the score is based on that's a fully adaptive test for those students. There's also 7 field test items. Once again, when on field test items, we're testing new content, we're testing the test items, and so we continue to build the bank out. Those were written 2 summers ago now, and we need to get those field tested so we can put those in the bank and continue to expand the bank. And then there are 5 map growth items. These items might look a little different to your students in this engine, but they're map growth items, and they are in there specifically to do research around understanding the relationship between NSCAS and map growth so that we can move forward with the through-year adaptive model that we're working towards. All of these pieces are necessary for us to get to where we're going, but it does make the test shorter, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. So some of the rationale that we used in making this decision, so that fully adaptive CAT for this year allows us to get to that through-year assessment, adaptive assessment, as quick as possible. Each student receives a specific test for them, and so in general, that should take less time, especially for students that might be struggling in that content area. And it's going to reduce spring testing time. So what we believe is that it's going to be about half the time, right? So if you've been using 2 sessions, it probably can be done in 1 session. And we think that the majority of students will be done in less than 60 minutes per content area, right? So it's less than 60 minutes for ELA, less than 60 minutes for mathematics. That is an estimate. We don't know for sure because we've never done it before. Those are based on the time it takes students to get through questions that we know. So it is our best guess, our best estimate. I should say estimate. It's not a guess. It's an informed one. So yeah, and it also uses the Nebraska standards and blueprint. Students, it is based on the TOS, or the table of specification, that is out there, and it is our test, just scaled down a little bit. Like I said before, this information is the same percentage of indicators. So all the indicators that we've identified previously as being testable on the statewide assessment are eligible to be tested. Specific students may not have a specific indicator, but all students are eligible for all of those. So how that plays into,
Excuse me, Jeremy, can
yeah,
you speak to the question that Brianne had? If a student is proficient in the fall, will they need to test in the winter and spring?
okay, yeah, I can. So proficiency on map growth has nothing to do with NSCAS phase 1 pilot, right? So the map growth in this fall and this winter and spring is all based on student or district choice. So districts choose whether students test map growth, and that's, I'm going to, Brianna, I'm going to assume, oh, you meant in the future NSCAS.
Yeah,
We're not
for
going to
the,
talk about the future NSCAS right now. We're gonna focus here, because I can't even tell you all of that information. Yeah, we're not going to get into that today. It's a good question, but we're going to save that for later.
sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Okay, I'm going to continue on, and we'll see. I'll come back to some of those questions there. So as far as reporting and accountability goes, we are not going to publicly report results from the phase 1 pilot. So those are not going to go on the NEP about proficiency and all of those types of things. So this will not be publicly reported. Districts will get results. What those results look like, we're still trying to work through and determine. Um, there will also be no individual student reports. So you will, for the phase 1 pilot, you will not have individual student reports that you send home to families, okay? And that's specifically around the phase 1 pilot. For ACT, for alternate, for both ELA and for math, you're gonna get ISRs for those, okay? When will decisions be made about that? So we're working through the decisions right now. Our technical advisory committee is coming back together in November to look at information. That being said, we're still, because this is mostly based on research and mostly based on what we need to move forward, some of those decisions might be held until actually the test is given before you're going to know fully what's in that package of results. What I'll tell you is that you should be relying on other sources to get information about where your students are. So either map growth or other assessments. We have, you'll not get aggregate information. You'll get a data file with individual students that you can aggregate. We're not going to aggregate any PDF files or anything like that. We are going to provide support about how to aggregate that information. So if you want to look at your free reduced lunch students, so your socioeconomic disadvantaged students, we'll show you how to use that file to do that if you don't already know how to do it. But you will definitely get a student level file with results in it. The question will be, how detailed are those results? What all the information that will include. That being said, relying on other sources of information to inform your processes is better, and you should be doing that. Results are intended for internal use only, right? Districts will be able to decide who gets to see those results. It will be at the district level that you'll get results, and actually we're gonna divide them into school and district for you, but only the district level people will have access to those reports. So if you don't want those reports to go to schools, you will have complete control over those results and whether you want to share and how you want to share those at the district level. We don't want those to be misinterpreted, because really these are preliminary types of scores. They are not fully vetted in a way that we feel comfortable putting out to the public and putting out to the parents. You'll get to decide if you want to give those to your teachers or not, and how much time you spend with them. It will be down the road, but fairly early after the window closes. Lori, all good questions. Okay, I'll come back and see if we got some more of those. So I'm going to continue on here. So there will be no public reporting, no individual ISRs. for the phase 1 pilot. That means we are not going to run accountability for this year. So there will be no new classification or designations in the fall of 21, right? So a year from right now, there will not be new classifications and accountability. We will not be running accountability on any part of the system, right? So there'll be no accountability measures done at all for that. There might be some internal things that we do, but we're not doing any public accountability. And if we do anything else, Lane will be sure to tell anybody. He's still working through some of those pieces. That's a good question, right? So one of the things that we haven't determined, for instance, is if we're going to publish ACT results, right? So ACT results are standard administration. We publish those on the NEP every year. We might not be able to make that decision until we know how standard and normal that administration is, okay? This includes high school, Dave. Yes, there'll be no accountability for any grade level for any schools in the fall of 21. Yes, those numbers, well, I don't know about indefinitely. The question is about TSI and ATSI. At this point in time, there's no plan to run those numbers because they get really hard to run when you are missing years worth of data and you don't have growth data to do that. One of the things that happened last year with our waiver for not testing and not having accountability is we had to agree as a state that those would continue. And that for this year, we're uncertain about what the federal government is going to do with accountability for this year. So we know we're going to be in compliance with assessment provisions for the most part. We're unsure if we're going to be compliant about accountability, but we've already decided that we're not going to do the accountability system and run those classifications. We have to figure out if we, we'll have to figure out if we continue with those or if we're going to apply for a waiver at some point. The election plays a role in that, as there may or may not be a new administration, what they're willing to do. Last year it was kind of a blanket waiver for all the states. This year it is not going to be blanket waivers. We already know that. So I'm going to continue on here. I know there's a lot of pieces in the chat right now. So we're looking at what we need to do both at the state and federal level to make sure that we can move forward with that. And so you can we'll continue to update you on those pieces. There isn't a waiver process for the state statutes that are there. So we have to work with the governor's office, the unicameral potentially, let them know that we're not going to have those new accountability results. And this is just some of the rationale. I probably don't really need to go over this with all of you because you're living it about what are some of the problems with running accountability in this type of environment. COVID is having a lot of impacts on, well, one, the scores that we have access to, since we have no scores from last year, which means we have impacted growth information. We know that we have a lot of different environments that are continually being affected and changing. And so all of these things play a role in that recommendation that we've made to the commissioner and that we're planning on moving forward with. I should probably note that this is, at this point in time for accountability, this is still a recommendation, the commissioner's recommendation to the board. They haven't taken any action on this or anything, but we don't anticipate a lot of pushback in that regard. So, but you never know. So this is that this is actually the chart that we sent out In that DAC email that kind of gave you all of this information earlier, we added ALPA 21 to it to kind of show you where we are right now as far as how much time you should be planning on and all of those types of things, to give you the best information we have right now. We're still working on manuals. We're still working on guidance for scheduling and all of those types of pieces, but what we think that timing column is really fairly accurate right now. We don't anticipate a lot of changes to that. Actually, I don't anticipate any changes to that except for potentially science. We're actually looking at doing some changes to the field test that might shorten that a little bit. We're still working through whether we can do that or not, but as of right now, these are the recommendations that you need to look at when scheduling. ELA is writing and reading and English language arts for ACT. That is correct. That includes all three pieces of that. Yep. So writing will be included for that standard administration in the spring for ACT. Good question. Okay, so this is kind of new information that we put together to kind of try to start to wrap your heads around what is expected. And so we'll kind of go through this for both, right? For both the NSCAS Phase 1 pilot, so that's ELA Mathematics grades 3 through 8, and for NSCAS General Science Field Test, grades 5 and 8, and this is the same information for science for last year, there is no paper pencil or translated versions of those tests. Let me say that again. For both the NSCAS Phase 1 pilot and the NSCAS General Science Field Test, so that's all general assessments, right? All general assessments, there is no paper pencil or translated versions. Students that require a paper pencil or translated version will be exempt from testing. That is this year only. That is not in the future, right? In the future, there will be paper pencil, there will be Spanish translations of those tests, but not in this year. This does not include alternate. There are still paper pencil versions for alternate, so there is no exemption of students that are taking alternate. Okay. That being said, and this is one thing that I forgot to put in yeah, this would I'll start that. Yeah, this would require documentation. You would have to have, students have to have, right now on the general assessment, to be able to take a paper pencil is only a few students that actually qualify. So large print, Braille, or you need a written translation. There are, yeah, so it's no Braille, no large print, yep, no paper pencil at all. Give you an idea of this, in spring of 19, there was less than 200 students statewide that required a paper pencil test. Okay, so this is not the bulk of your students. This is a very small percentage of your students. That being said, we are providing a large print and a Braille extended sample test. It's a 20-item test. You're going to be able to order that extended test if you want. It is large print and Braille, and there's a Spanish version as well that you'll be able to print. If you want those students to take a test in the same time frame that the other students are taking, you're welcome to give that test. The key will also be available. There's also additional resources. That is going to be available ongoing as an extended practice type of situation for you, because we wanted to provide a potential resource for you to test those students and to get some indication of where they are, but it is not an official test. It is not a non-secure test. You're able to use that as you will, and so that is an option for you. Okay, so let me go over that again. I know that is a lot of information. So NSCAS Phase 1 pilot, ELA and math, and for the science field test for general, there's no paper, pencil, or translation. If students require those, they are exempt from testing. There is an optional test for those students if you would like, and you'll be able to order those materials. We will send instructions on how to order those materials when they're ready, Melanie. Yes, so we're still working on whether you need to tell us information at all about which students, right? Yeah, so there is no Braille for general assessments. Yep. Other questions about that? I'm gonna stop right there. I have remote learners on here. Actually, let me get through the next 2 slides and then we'll stop and take questions, okay? So participation, let me talk about this broadly, right? So at this time, NDE expects all non-exempt students to test. Federal guidelines expect 95% of students to test, right? So that's how you, in the past, that's the threshold that everybody needed to meet. We understand that these are unusual circumstances. As always, we require either a completed test or reason not tested, okay? So we're gonna look for either a completed test or a reason not tested for all students. Couple of different things. We want to be very, and this is, some of you are thinking, well, Jeremy, you've talked about these things before, but we also have a lot of new DACs this year. So let me talk about parents and opt-out. There is always, parents, guardians could opt out of statewide testing. That is, we have very few parents that do that in the state of Nebraska. We want to keep it that way. We like that that is a low number because that result is bad for schools. It's bad for the state as far as understanding where our students are. We want to keep that number low. So that is, as always, an option for parents. They can opt out, but those end up in a normal year being 0 scores that feed into the accountability system. So trying to keep those numbers low is important. We do have the emergency medical waiver, right? So if your student is in an emergency situation, they can qualify for an emergency medical waiver. The key word there is always emergency. For this year, as of right now, this is a this year only option. You are gonna have a COVID waiver available for this year. So if you cannot get a student tested because of fear of COVID, you're going to be able to fill that out and get it to us. We don't have that form ready. I don't know what it looks like entirely, but I know it's coming to you. Okay. One thing that I'll say about that is we have not determined the ELPA 21. We have not determined if that is available. The COVID waiver is available for ELPA 21. ELPA 21 is a kind of a different piece. It has different guidelines, both federally specifically. So we don't know all of that yet. This is for all of the other NSCAS tests, not necessarily COVID. We'll provide that information when we know it, okay? So COVID waiver is available. What that means then, so this kind of this all plays together, so it's important. There is not a remote testing option for any of the NSCAS tests. We are not going to support that. We're not going to encourage that. There are too many security, logistic issues. We think you have enough to deal with without having to try to remote test students in this way. Along with that, I'm just going to say this out loud, is whatever you do, do not violate test security or assessment constructs and attempt to test students, right? So there are things that you might be able to do. Make sure you're being careful and thoughtful about the way that you go about trying to get all students tested. If you have remote learners, what our expectation is that you would bring those students in to either the school or another site, substitute site, to try to get those students tested. If families refuse, because of the fear of COVID, that's when you would be able to employ the COVID waiver. Once again, the ELPA 21, we're still determining whether remote testing will be available for ELPA 21, and then if there is going to be a COVID waiver available for that as well. Yeah, that was heavy. That's a lot of information. What questions do you have? If you want to come off mute, that would be fine. If you want to type that in
I
the
have a
chat,
couple of questions that I've taken down from chat, if you'd like to
okay.
respond.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm not sure if you responded to this one. For special education students not on alternate, but 1 to 2 or more grades levels behind, what are suggestions for continued use of map growth for diagnostic purposes?
So I would suggest you use whatever types of assessments are giving you good information, right? So if map growth is giving you good information, because it's adaptive outside of grade level, then definitely continue to use that. If you need to use other assessments that give you good information for those students, whatever gives you good information as far as informing classroom and where those students are, those are the types of tests you need to focus on with those students.
Can districts share individual information with students and or parents if they choose?
Can you share individual
Information.
So for the phase 1 pilot, once you get the results, you can do whatever you want with it. What I'm going to tell you is that there's the possibility of a lot of confusion. And so I wouldn't necessarily encourage that, but I'm not going to come out and stop you or anything like that if you want to share results with parents. I would encourage you to share map growth and other types of things with parents so they're not clamoring for the results of that test. That being said, I know some parents can be very persistent. If you want to show them a score and then count them good and they go away, that's fine, but it's possible that it could do more harm and cause more confusion than it helps you with. So I'm not going to recommend it at this time. When we find out, when we know what all of the results are going to look like that you're going to have, we'll provide additional guidance as to how you should use that. One of the things that the technical advisory committee is going to get into is how you should think about these results moving forward. So we will provide some guidance around that. That being said, once you have the results, they're yours to do with as you wish. But I would caution against that at this point.
The translated version that you mentioned is just for paper pencil, correct? Not having that opportunity, not the online translated version. I didn't think we were going to have any translations.
There's no translated version at all.
Okay.
For those
and how
tests.
how do they show the students who are exempt because of translation needs?
Right. So we haven't determined all of that, to tell you the truth. Last year, when we were doing that, if you had an exempt student, we were having you let Maggie Sis know. We haven't determined as a department whether we're going to require you to let us know that or not. It would make sense that we would have to determine that, right? Because we want that scorer to know that they're exempt, which would be a reason not tested. So we'll have to determine that, and we'll send guidance about how to take care of that.
Okay. If they use the COVID waiver, will the students get a 0 test score?
No, a COVID waiver that is approved will not result in a 0 test score. That being said, it doesn't matter if it's a 0 or not because there's no accountability with it. So what I'll tell you is a COVID waiver will not be fed into any of those pieces. So it doesn't, in that way, it doesn't matter, I guess. Potentially it could matter for ACT. I get that. So no, it's not going to count against anybody.
Okay, so regarding then remote learners and ACT, the same expectation is there?
It is, right? So you would be able to use a COVID waiver for an ACT student that does not want to test because of fear of COVID. That being said, we want everybody to be able to take the ACT if they want, so providing that opportunity. it's not, I would not characterize it as optional though. So the test is not, ACT is not optional, it is required. But if families refuse to bring their students in to have them tested because of COVID, you could use a COVID waiver. If they're refusing to test no matter what, that is a parent opt-out or a student opt-out, and that should be done accordingly.
If the entire school ends up going remote, is that a school-wide waiver?
That is a good question. No, it's not. So if you are remote learning, so this is where I would say this is, and this is a good example. So Omaha was remote learning, all of their students. They still brought students in to take the ACT, right? We would expect a student, the school to try to bring in students. Now, that being said, I don't want you to risk students getting sick, right? I don't want you to risk staff getting sick. So we'll have to see in the spring. It's a 7-week window. So that being said, the expectations are that you try to test your students, right? So that I can't stress that enough. If you didn't see the letter from Secretary DeVos, that is the expectation federally. It's our expectation at the department level. One thing I'll say is if we don't have enough students test, then we don't get the data we need to move forward, and then we have to, that changes what we can do next year, right? The expectation is we test all students. We expect the numbers to be fairly low about who doesn't test. That is our expectation right now. We'll see what happens. Go ahead, Trudy.
Will the COVID waiver be available for students in quarantine versus students who are remote learning?
Yeah, that might qualify under emergency medical waiver if they're in quarantine and can't be tested. We'll have to determine that, but yeah, I can see that as being a difference.
Zeros won't be assigned to students as it's a pilot, correct? No accountability outcomes, but participation still counts? Question.
Yes.
Okay. And security agreements that are being signed right now, the question was asked about who needs to sign that, as the remote learners may be from multiple buildings yet not in the principal's building. How would they go about that?
So if you need an additional security agreement to cover remote learners and who's responsible, then let Maggie know and we'll get you an additional security agreement sent to that person. In general, what I would say is, since we're not going to test students remotely, it's wherever they would typically, wherever you're going to test, right? So it doesn't have to, if you're going to, for instance, if I was going to run, the district was going to run a test site that is not in any of the buildings for my remote learners, I don't need an additional person to sign a security agreement. It's the principals are technically the legal authority of a building. The DACs are signing those. We expect everybody to follow through and do their best to follow all of the guidance we put out there. We don't need additional people to necessarily sign anything.
So Jeremy, I unmuted my phone just because I want.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and it was a really good question because of
Sure.
what you just said, and more I'm learning, the more I thank you for the information because it's filling in the gaps that I have. So
Sure.
For example, we have 2 central office directors that are kind of overseeing the remote program. Well, and actually I would agree with even my secondary curriculum director as well with the middle school and the high school. So should I have those directors sign the security agreement, or are you saying it's fine the way it is based on the principal being responsible?
I think it's fine the way it is. If you want those directors to sign it in that case, let us know when we'll send them an agreement and they can sign it. If you want that additional piece to kind of put into place, but I don't think it's necessary from our perspective.
Okay, I appreciate knowing that, and I don't know what it looks like in terms of where they're going to test anyway, so maybe we'll just play wait and see.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you have processes within your district that take care of that, for instance, we don't make every proctor sign in a security agreement, right?
Right.
And so if they're simply proctoring remote learners even at an alternate site that's not at their regular building, to me that's not, it doesn't require an additional security agreement.
All right. Thanks for clarification.
Yep, not a problem. Trudy, what other questions we have?
The other question was regarding ACT, but Iris, I believe, has answered it.
Okay.
Unless there's a further, Jean, are you good with her answer then?
Yes.
Seems like it. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
I have my
Okay.
hand up. Can I ask a question out
Is
loud?
there a waiver
yes,
for?
please go ahead, Bethany.
I put a couple in chat, but I'm having a hard time representing everything in there, so maybe it's easier.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I get that. So go ahead.
So this fall for MAP, we sent home a letter, or had schools send home a letter by email or hard copy with a link for them to access the opt-out if they were choosing not to bring their child in to take the test. So we said it's offered, you need to contact this person to make arrangements. Otherwise, you need to opt out for MAP.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It turned out to be a real nightmare for schools because lots and lots and lots of parents did not respond at all. And they ended up having multiple email contacts,
Right.
phone calls.
We've talked about this. Yep.
Parents. And so have you thought about like, what's the process going to be for like contacting families about bringing kids in? And the other thing I'm worried about are two things. One, if we didn't have very many parents take us up on the map where the kids are actually getting scores and those are being used educationally for students, then I don't think parents are going to be really excited about the reason they don't have them in the school is because they want to keep them safe. And so they're not going to want to bring them in. The second thing is we struggled with staff because the teachers are with the kids, the test coordinators covering for teachers who are sick. And so I don't know when they're going to, and parents don't want the kids merged in with their classes because they don't want them in their classes. And so when it'll help that the testing is shorter, but I just don't know like how they're going to fit all that in. So two things. One is the notification process and all of that. And the other is just so you're aware of how difficult this is going to be. And maybe you already were.
I'm very well aware of how difficult it is going to be, but I don't know how to create a different expectation around it, right? So I know that we're going to have we're going to have students that don't test. That being said, if we were in a regular year, right, I shouldn't say, if we were doing a regular test with regular accountability, there would be consequences for not testing all students, right? And so if we fast forward a year and we're in a regular year with a regular test and a regular accountability, schools are going to have to come up with how are you going to test your remote learners. And I know we said there's not a remote option, but that's what I was advised to not do, right? And not go down that direction because of the logistics there. So we understand that we're going to have people that say, no, we don't want to do this test, especially because there's not results and we don't expect you to keep that information from them. But we do expect you to offer that test, to attempt to test them. At that point, if you can't get a response for them that they're not going to, that they don't want the test and they don't show up, I think you can write that off as a COVID waiver. Okay, you don't have to have the parent signature on that part. That's one of the reasons I don't have the COVID waiver for you yet, is because I need to look at what the expectations were. We don't want to create undue burden on you, on anybody. To do that, but we do want to account for all students, right? So there's no accountability, as in there's no accountability system, right? But that doesn't mean there's not accountability for trying to make sure we test all of the students. And so we need to do that, but we do want to make it easy on you. I don't expect districts to reach out 4 or 5, maybe even 2 times actually. If they don't respond the first time and they don't show up to test, that's probably a COVID waiver.
Okay.
And you can write it off as such.
Could the process for them saying that it's a COVID, I mean, can we do some sort of electronic process? Because
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yep.
we did an electronic process for the map, and we have more than 2,000 of them in there, and just like all of that was just really a lot.
Yeah, and we're going to be pretty open as far as how you go about doing this. So we'll put together a form, and we'll figure out if you want to change it to be an electronic form, change it a little bit. I don't have a problem with that, but simply just writing kids off and saying we're not going to test them without attempting to isn't going to work. Okay, so we have to show that we've given an effort, we've attempted to test them or to get them to come in and test. One reason I don't want to use the parent opt-out is because I don't want parents to get used to opting their students out of testing, because I'm worried that they'll start doing that every year, and that's not going to be good for anybody as well. And so the COVID waiver is attempt to keep that from happening, but also be an accountability piece for us so that we can say, yeah, we had this many COVID opt-outs this year. How does that influence policy going forward? How does that influence how we treat next year's assessment? I think for all of us, trying to make sure that we wrap our heads around those pieces is important, because it could have big impacts on how we treat all of this going forward. I mean, nobody has the crystal ball that can say what it looks like a year from now. But I know that they're not, those expectations of testing students are not going to go away. They're going to be modified for this year, right? We're going to do our best that we can again, but they're not going to go away. And so what that looks like, how long the pandemic lasts, how long all of this is impacted, it's really hard to say. So trying to keep expectations where they're going to be, but also understand that we're all going to do our best, and there's going to be students that are not going to be tested because of the pandemic, I think is a place that we all have to be and understand. I don't know if that helps, Bethany.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I'm feeling a little less anxious.
Okay.
Jeremy,
so it's important for us to set up what our expectations are, and for us all to try to meet them. If we can't meet them, that's just the reality of it, and that's going to be reflected as we go forward, and then it'll inform the decisions that we have to go make in the future. And so this is kind of the thing that we've been doing all year long already from the department. So we're going to do the best we can. And the thing is that I know you guys are amazing, and you do amazing things, and our teachers do amazing things. We're going to do the best we can, because we're Nebraska and we're teachers and we are educators, and that's what we do. And we'll figure out the rest as we go forward. So hopefully that's that message that you can take back, understand that we're going to be understanding, that we're trying our best to support you, and also try to keep all of the statutes, law requirements, all of those at bay the best we can in a really difficult situation.
Jeremy, are you going to take a break, or did you want to go forward?
I have no idea what time it is.
It's 10:07.
And what time did we have it? We had it at 10:30 is what we planned.
I think so.
Let me double check. Are there other questions, or can I clarify any more? This is a good time to get those out there. I noticed there's some NAEP questions going on. We do have NAEP information. Thank you for your understanding and your patience around NAEP. I get it. We tried our best. We're going to continue to try. We know that other states are pushing back as well. We don't think doing NAEP is a good idea. From a state perspective, we don't think it's a good idea. We appreciate that there's not been a lot of anger around this, because we don't ultimately have control over that. As soon as we signed, or superintendent signed and accepted that Title I money, it kind of locks us into that. So there's a lot of leverage that the federal government has over us in doing NAEP. But we'll do the best we can. If and there are pieces around NSCAS or around NAEP and remote learners. Rhonda can answer those better than anybody else can. Like I said, we have NAEP coming up for later as well. So, and Rhonda says what Rob said is true for NAEP.
Can you really quick talk, and maybe it's Allison who needs to address this, but she posted some language from ESSA related to the requirement to do ELPA. Is that different from the NSCAS for some reason?
It is not. That let me. It is somewhat different in the expectations that they have, partly and I guess actually what I'd say is the expectation is it gets to be a little bit different at the state level. Okay, so since we're not reporting results and we're not doing accountability, NSCAS results and the ability to for us to say it's fine, here's a COVID waiver, is easier than when there are decisions being made directly with ELPA 21, right? So a student cannot test out of English language needs without having that test. And so there's different pieces around that with civil rights law and those types of things. Allison, if you're on and you want to jump in, that would be fine. But I think there is a difference in how we're looking at it at the state level. I don't know that there is a huge difference in what it is at the federal level and their expectations, right? So I'm not sure the feds are going to be okay with everything we're doing, but we're going to go forward and do the best we can.
Right. And I appreciate that explanation, Jeremy. I will tell you that I am taking a pretty strict interpretation of the law as written, which very clearly states that we have an obligation to test every English learner, K through 12, on the statewide annual assessment. There is no 95% participation threshold on the ELPA 21 or a statewide ELP assessment. Every English learner is expected to be tested. So having said that, I think the information that Jeremy is sharing today is as accurate as we can give today. As of today, there is no waiver from the U.S. Department of Ed to not test every English learner. Of course, if that comes through, I will be the first to share it.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody else at this point in time? We do have more detailed information on everything as we go forward, but I know that this is the biggest part of probably a lot of the questions that you've been having or thinking about are wrapped up in these last couple of slides here. Okay, I've stunned you all into silence, it looks like. You're all trying to figure out, okay, what's next? Okay, we're going to go ahead and take our 10-minute break. I think everybody could use one based on the faces that I'm seeing, and I can't see everybody's face, obviously, with 200 plus people. Let's take a 10-minute break. It is, let's come back at 10:25. Okay, we'll come back at 10:25. Stretch your legs, get another Pepsi if you need it, whatever you need to do. Check your email, walk the dog. I don't know, whatever you're doing today. So Iris, you go ahead and do you. That'd be fine.
Thanks.
Yep. I'm going to step away myself. I will be back. Where are my controls?
Can you hear that?
Yeah, sounds good.
I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be bright, 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 sunshiny day. It's gonna be bright, 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 sunshiny day. I think I can make it now. The pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be bright, 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 sunshiny day. All around, there's nothing but blue sky. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue. I can see clearly now. Rain is
By $1.2 billion with the government. Get a diversified 10% payout and inflation hedge protecting you. Call for the math. Call 201-210-2727. An offer to buy or sell any security is only made by a private placement memorandum. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Returns are annualized. National is a real estate development firm. See us at NRIA.net. Sean Hannity here. We all know the power that the IRS has, and yes, for some it can be a bit scary, but if you're a business owner and you owe payroll taxes, well, maybe your business is taking a hit because of the pandemic. Well, scary is now an understatement. Not paying your payroll taxes can lead to outrageous penalties and much worse. The IRS can actually shut down your business and come after you personally. So do not try to deal with the IRS on your own. You need someone on your side to fight for you and win for you. Now get expert help. Call my friends at Rush Tax Resolution. Rush Tax is an A+ rated on the Better Business Bureau with an unheard of 0 complaints. And they'll only take your case if they know they can help you. So many listeners have already called Rush Tax, and their tax issues are now open. If you're a business behind on payroll taxes, this is the company that I trust and I recommend. Call now. 800-258-7050. 800-258-7050. 800-258-7050. Rush
That
Tax Resolution.
Iris, is that your commercial, or are you
No,
getting
that is
kickbacks on
not,
that?
it's not me. I was gonna move on to some Van Halen and
Oh, go ahead. You're fine. We got time.
yeah.
Season recording. Oh, that one. Why not?
What was that number?
I know.
Again, that number was.
Oh, Josh, you're just such a character.
Hey, you. Hey, Teresa, how are you? Oh, good. Just listening to my Zoom call. Sorry. No, it's okay. It's quiet. What's
And
up?
everybody else is too, Teresa.
Oh, you were as nice. I was. Oh, that's good. Fantastic. All right. He's going to take a good nap, huh?
Oh, a little bit of jump. It's not very loud right now, Iris. I don't know if it's far away from it was louder for a minute and now it's fading.
I can fix that.
We got about 3 minutes till we start up again.
Jeremy, can I ask you a quick question before we jump back into break?
Sure.
Do you have any updates in regards to Creative Curriculum Gold for our preschool and babies?
I do not have anything on that. That would come from early childhood.
Okay, that's what I figured, but
Yeah.
same kind of thing as NAEP. At this point in time, they're requiring it.
Yeah.
But it makes it pretty difficult. So I'm gonna probably we'll follow up with them, but I'll probably have that team do the same thing that we're doing for our school age. Just document every attempt that you make, and then if you can't get it, can't get it. Okay.
Yeah, and in general, that I think that's. I don't want to speak for them, but that's generally the way that the department is going, right? We do our best and then we figure it out. So there's a lot of flexibility in what we can do, but we want to make sure that expectations are still clear.
From the SPED world, even Gold is going on. It's not getting any type of pass.
Okay.
Correct.
Very good. Okay, we are going to, yep, not a problem. Thank you. Good question. We have just a couple of pieces here, then we'll move on. Through some private chat, we thought that I just do a couple of clarifications here and just make sure everybody's on the same page. Once again, part of the reason that there is a distinction between NSCAS and ELPA is because of the type of test we're doing this year, because it is this pilot, because it is, there is no accountability. There's some extra wiggle room as far as what we can accept and what we can't accept, can and can't accept. And so there's probably one of the reasons why there's some distinction. The ELPA 21 is a standard administration, and therefore the expectations are pretty standard as well. So I don't know if that helps or not. One other question I wanted to just share with the group, and I think this is a good question, and for clarification's sake here, let me get back to it, because it came through privately. It says, if the district determines it is unsafe, sorry, to clarify, if a district determines that it is unsafe for students and staff to be at the school to learn, NDE's current position is that we would still ask them to come into school to take the pilot test in spring. So I would say my answer to that is no. If it is unsafe to come to the school and learn, our expectation is not that you bring students into test in the normal environment, but that you think about and attempt to test those students. So could you bring them in smaller groups? Could you bring them in for shorter periods of time? Could you bring them in different ways that would still allow you to test, right? So the expectation is that you do your best to figure out a safe way to test students. In no way is NDE's position that you should put your students and staff in an unsafe situation. That is not our position at all. Our position is find a way to be safe and get them tested if you can. I don't know if that helps or not. Hopefully it does. There is no assessment that should be taken and risk people's lives. So let's put it that way. Okay, we are ready to roll. And now we're getting into NSCAS updates. Security agreements went out yesterday, timed just right. The deadline for those to all DACs and principals that have testing in their buildings, they should be out there. It's EchoSign. That's the margaret.sis@echosign.com is where it came from. If you didn't see those, or if somebody didn't see them, you might want to check your junk inbox because it might be shooting it there. You never know. The deadline for those is Friday, October 16th. It would be wonderful if everybody could get those signed and turn right back in. It only takes a couple of minutes to do. Those were emailed to principals as well as DACs. Yes, those should have gone out to principals and DACs. If you know of somebody that didn't get one, Maggie Sist is the person you want to talk to. Her regular email is margaret.sis@nebraska.gov. If you didn't get those, if we don't get them back, we will be in contact and try to get those. We go until we have all of those turned in, because that is something that has to be done from our perspective. And so if everybody does it, everybody's life is a little easier. So just know that those are out there now, and the deadline to get those done is the 16th. Hopefully we can do that with little work is necessary to get people to do that. Yeah, Maggie's regular email is the same before the @ margaret.sis@nebraska.gov. Thank you, Iris.
I also just want to add that I will send out automatic reminders, and if I like a day or two before the deadline, if any principals have not signed it, the DACs will get a list of those principals.
Okay. So she will try to follow up with you and help you out getting those all in. She knows that sometimes it takes a little extra push from her principal to get those done. So very good. Security, so data processes, we just want to talk about these things again. As always, having clean data makes everything easier as we do our work throughout the year. Enrollment will come through the advisor system. Map growth and NSCAS phase 1 pilot will merge those records for the spring. You know, students enrolled up until the last day of the regular test window, or we'll give you a date actually, and those students would be expected to test or have a not tested reason. FTE, right, full-time equivalency. So students that are in your, or are your responsibility, let's put it that way, that are your responsibility 51% of the time or more are expected to test. So if you have a homeschool student that comes in for a couple of classes each day, but it's less than that 51%, then they are not expected and should not test. If they are over that 51%, then they are expected to have a test record or a reason not tested. Can't stress this enough. We do this every year, but we'll continue to stress it as we go forward. We don't test juniors in high school. We test third-year cohort students. So students that are in their third-year cohort are the students that are tested, not juniors, right? So it is the cohort, the 2022 cohort will be tested in 2021. So all students with that cohort, regardless of grade, are expected to test. Students not in the cohort are not expected to test. Please make sure that that happens. If the cohort is wrong for some reason, you can request that gets changed, but unless that it was an error of some sort and not just what it is, they won't change it for you, right? So there are sometimes errors in that, and so you can make that request through the advisor help desk. But in general, a student that is in the third-year cohort is expected to either have the ACT or the alternate test result or a reason not tested. There is a new Who Reports What. If you're not familiar with that document, you might want to check it out. This is especially helpful for students that are in external programs for trying to figure out who owns that student or who's going to report that student information. So you might want to give that a look. In general, if a student is in an external program that is not a public school, you are still responsible for that student. We work really hard. Maggie works really hard with those external programs, Rule 18's level 3 programs, to try to get all those students tested. We'll see what that looks like this year, but all those students need to be, or we expect all those students to be tested or to have a reason not tested. Yeah, so make sure at the end of the year, make sure everything is updated by June 30th, making sure that all of that information is correct. If you follow your guidelines put out by the Data Research and Evaluation team over at NDE, around advisor and the guidelines for that. There was not, we had a question about if there was substantive changes to who reports what. Maggie, I don't think there was substantive changes to that document. Do you have any other feedback on that question, Maggie? My sense is there was not.
Yeah, no, I don't think there was any major changes to it, but
yeah.
I always like to provide the latest and greatest because they do some minor.
Yeah. So, Bethany, I don't believe there was anything major there. Okay. Going the wrong way. So these are not new test codes. They say they're new, not tested codes, but they're not, because we told you about them last year, but we didn't get to use them, so we left them in here, right? So if a student gets put into the alternate roster and they're actually taking the general, you're going to be able to tell us that, right? So the reason they weren't tested on alternate is general. A student refusal is now available as well. So if it's not a parent refusal, but actually the student that refuses the test after you've tried a couple of times, you're able to let us know that. We changed that so we could track that. Once again, having information helps us make policy decisions. And so not knowing the difference between those wasn't helpful as far as that goes. So now if it's a student refusal, you can let us know. And you're able to also, TXT testing in an external program will help us track that information. So if you have a student on your roster, but they're at an external program and are going to test there, you're able to mark that so that we can track that information and make sure results go to the correct place, and also know why you didn't test them, why somebody else should be testing them. No longer enrolled can be used, obviously, for students that leave your district, or for students that are new to your district and tested someplace else. So no longer enrolled really means tested someplace else or should have been tested at someplace else. It can be used in either instance. These give you some general dates for cleanup. So at the beginning of January, you want to get your rosters, your information in your student information systems as updated as possible. I think the 11th is the first date that we are going to start transmitting information to test vendors. So getting that as clean as possible is really important. These give you some ideas of where we're thinking that the dates are going to be. You'll notice that they are not specific dates. They're just months at this point in time. Some of the processes are still in determination for what we need to do this year with the changes that we've made. We will put out a more detailed calendar as soon as it's available so that you can make plans for any of those review windows that you might have. And be expected to check those things. We're still, like we said, determining final dates, ISRs for alternate. Remember, we're not doing ISRs for the general assessment or the phase 1 pilot. I should mention this for science too, although I think it's probably on a later slide now that I think about it, is you will not get any results back for the science field test, right? So if science field tests, we're testing the test, we're not testing students, so to speak. So you will not get any results back for science for this year. So don't expect those to be in the files. That was the same as what we were doing last year and had planned for last year, but we didn't get to do the test. So we're really testing the test so that we can build the operational test for next year. So you will not get any science results back for either the general assessment or for the alternate.
We have a couple questions. Can we get these answered
Yep,
here?
absolutely.
Okay, so external sites, are they going to be able to test electronically since there are no paper pencil? Is that correct?
Yes, so the expectation is they would test electronically. We've been trying to push the external programs to be online testing for a while. It is going to be an expectation that they test. We'll see where we get with that. We have some of those external programs that are doing a very good job of it. Some of them have been sluggish. I suppose is a nice way to put it, to move to online. Online is where they need to be unless there's a good reason to not be online, because the adaptive tests, the through-year model is going to require all students to be online as much as possible. And so we are expecting them to be moving in that direction. We'll see what happens, but we're working on it. So.
And who's responsible for getting the ACT materials to the external programs?
External programs, Iris helped me with this because I can't remember if we changed this
Normally,
last year.
If the student is on their list, so if we transfer it, Melanie, you know, or anybody, if we transfer it from your school list to their external program list, the materials get delivered to that external program if they're participating. So they include their address and it gets shipped to them directly.
Yep. So that you don't have to worry about that order.
Okay. And there are a couple questions on the alternate assessment.
Okay.
Do you think the alternate assessment data transmission is going to be a month earlier in December instead of January? If so, are we going to need to move back our dates?
The data transmission, so the roster information for alternate is happening in January. I don't know the exact date, but it's after January 11th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Maggie.
Yeah, it'll actually be probably the following week of January 11th. We're trying.
But none of those are happening with any tests until after the 11th of January.
Correct.
And how do we communicate to DRC that we are going to be assigned the same alternate form that we had last year so we can still use the paper copies?
And who was that from?
Lori. Hannah.
So if you were planning on doing that, which is another, okay.
Remember I asked about this?
Yeah, I know, Lori. I know exactly where. Okay, so let me say this out loud. If you still have your alternate materials from last year, you don't have to destroy them. You should have destroyed them. But if you didn't, and I've told some people that it's okay. If you still have them, you don't need to destroy them. You can use them. But I need to know about it. So I need to get an email from you. So right now I have Bellevue and OPS as not printing new materials. If anybody else is in that boat, I need to get an email from you. Sharon, would you take that down to let DRC know for Bellevue and for OPS?
Are you wanting to also know the form that we had?
No, we know that information.
Okay.
I just need to know if there's school districts doing that.
Okay.
Yep, I'll follow up on it for you, Lori.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead. Sorry.
Do you want to
Judy.
continue or not? Okay.
Yeah, let's go through whatever questions we have. Let's go ahead and get them done.
All right, NSCAS, ACT, ISRs. There was discussion last year about possibly not having these additional ISRs. What is happening with that?
Yeah, so I am not planning on doing additional ISRs. I don't have the plan fully worked out yet. Most likely it is a form letter. I will get back to you on that, but it's probably gonna, yeah, I need to get back to you, Melissa, and everybody else, actually. So we are probably not going to send an additional ISR home. The student's individual report that they get from ACT, my sense is, and our sense in general, is that that's really all the families care about, is what they got on the ACT. They really don't care as much about what the state says or how the state says they performed. So we have a plan to make that less expensive and less burdensome on you. We are going to follow through with that plan, but I don't have the details yet. Iris, remind me to get that together so we can get that out to everybody, okay?
What about materials at external programs from alternate assessments?
Jeremy, I'm responding to Bethany right now on that one.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Am I understanding correctly then that districts will no longer be allowed to give paper pencil ACT?
No, that is not correct. So you have districts have the choice between online ACT and paper pencil ACT. That is still a choice that you have. What I was talking about was the NSCAS general or the phase 1 pilot for this year is moving. So in general, right, that only a few students are paper pencil at this time for that test. We're trying to make sure all the external programs move to online as opposed to doing paper pencil for students that don't require paper pencil. So we had some external programs that were doing paper pencil just because they were reluctant to move to online, not because the students required paper pencil. And so that's all I'm referring to. ACT is still a district choice between online or paper pencil.
Okay, we're done. We're good to go.
Okay, very good. Yep, ACT, here we go. I'm going to hand it over to Iris in just a minute. First of all, fall ACT. I know we're not completely done yet, but I can't thank everybody enough for helping us out to get that opportunity to students. I know that there was a lot of extra work that we don't typically do, that this unique situation we are in, to trying to provide that opportunity for students that missed it off last year. I think it was important that we did that. And I can't thank you enough for all the extra work that you did. Just so you know, so the second makeup date or the second date was yesterday. Today, or the 9th, is the deadline if you're going to do makeups on the 20th. Right. So if you're going to do makeups on the 20th, those are the dates that you need to order materials by. If you need help with that, contact Iris. So if you're going to do any makeups are not required. Right. But if you're going to do makeups, if you're going to give a student that was gone for whatever reason an opportunity to test, if you were on COVID quarantine and the whole school didn't get a test and you want to try to give them that test opportunity on October 20th, those are your dates to order your materials by. Good. I'm glad the kids appreciate that. We tried really hard to work with ACT to figure out a way to do that. It didn't. It kept getting pushed out, but you know, it's better than not, I think. So I'm glad that that was good. Bill, I'm going to have Iris answer that question because you're going to need to get a new form. Yeah. Did you see that, Iris? Would you follow up with him after your section?
Send me a quick email so I can get to you today.
Okay. Yeah, because we want to take care of that. Iris is getting ready to speak, so she's probably prepping for that. Bill, make sure we reach out to Iris and because we got to take care of that today, so that we can get you those tests. If that's what you want to do, is try to follow up on October 20th. Okay. Okay. And then I wanted just to kind of go over this again, just kind of leading into. Okay. ACT, once again, we test the 3rd year cohort students. The ACT writing is required for the NSCAS this year. We took out the writing this year because it was not for accountability and reporting purposes. It was just another opportunity for students to test and give them a chance. But that is going to be an expectation. It's going to be required for all students. It is available both online or paper pencil. You have those choices going into the year. You can also do paper pencil and do your makeups online if you want to. Those choices still exist. Accommodations and EL supports are available. I really want to stress making sure that you get those in as soon as possible for those third-year cohort students. ACT, I'll be really honest, has been struggling with accommodations and getting those done in a timely manner. They keep working on the system to try to get it fixed, but I'll tell you what, if I were you, I would get those accommodations in now, right, Iris? They can get those in now, correct? It is
No,
open
November
already.
1st, November 1st.
That's what I said. That's open November 1st, and you should get those in as soon as you can after November. Yeah, thanks. As soon as you can for after November 1st.
We're a good team.
Okay?
It's okay. We got it.
It is. I can't remember all these dates.
Oh. That's good.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay. I'm seeing we had problems getting materials out for ACT. If you follow up with Iris, we'll figure out what your options are and move forward. Sorry that happened. Remember, in the test dates, you have your choice between the first and second test window. It's your choice. Any subsequent window, so if you test in test window 1, you have test window 2 and test window 3 to do makeups. If you test in test window 2, you only have test window 3 to do makeups. Nobody should be doing their primary testing in test window 3. That is not an option. You have to choose 1 or 2, and then the others are for makeup. Okay, and we'll put those up on the screen in a second. And now I'm going to turn it over to Iris, and she's going to go through this pretty quick, Iris, because despite all my predictions of getting done early, it doesn't look like we're going to do that. So keep it moving, okay?
Right. And thanks, Jeremy. Thank you, everyone who had anything to do with ACT testing this fall. Yes. I really appreciate that, and the students do too. If you have not gotten materials at any point in time, please send me an email today, and let's get that fixed. Let's address that. And if you need materials for the October 20th test and you need some assistance with that, email me today. Okay, that'd be great. I appreciate that. And my email address will be in the slide in a little bit. But so. Well, so we missed the what's new. I was going to talk about some what's new stuff. Thanks. We have a lot of changes at ACT, right? But most importantly, the access to TAA, if you want to go forward, please, thanks. Now this is,
no.
Okay. But, yep, thank you. Oh,
sorry.
This is the front door to test administration and accessibility, as well as some of the other great things that we have here. This is going to be a important resource going forward, and having an account in here will be important if you have anything to do with ACT. You'll be able to navigate not only accommodations, but also any online reporting. We'll talk about that a little bit. And Pearson Access is next. You can also access from this location. So you do have to create an account. If you have not created an account and you need some assistance with that, you know where I'm at. Okay, we're gonna move forward, please. Thanks. Trusted agent. There's a lot of concerns about the trusted agent. I will tell you that the ACT has determined that there's a trusted agent is responsible for managing access to specific things in ACT because of student information, privacy issues, those kind of things. So the user who's established as your trusted agent is responsible for managing that user access at the school and the district levels. Last spring, the ACT distributed those trusted agent access codes in a physical letter, which was addressed to a district superintendent. That was the information that we had at the time in the spring. I know lots of superintendents have changed over the summer, and so ACT may not have the most updated information. If you do not have, if your superintendent does not have a trusted agent code, we can work through that and get that access to you. Yes, they do have to send that to the superintendent. That was ACT's determination. And if you have some questions about this, I'm going to move on just because we have so much to do, but I'd be glad to help anybody with that. Okay. Online reporting. So that's something that's going to be changing a little bit. We've had ACT scores have always been available in PA Next for a short amount of time. With the accessibility and online reporting, you will have previous reports available, and all forward-going information will be available on, it won't disappear after a certain amount of time. You'll have access to that over periods of time. And so it's a great resource in that. And also we'll have access in this successact.org to Pearson Access Next. You will, it's just an access to your login. So you will still have to log in to Pearson Access Next once you get through that, that portal. Okay, we'll talk about ACT online reporting system a little bit more. All of these reports were available in PA Next. The fall test reports will be available in Pearson Access Next, but going spring 2021, all reports will only be available in the online reporting system. So, and you'll have previous year's reports available to you. Okay, yes.
Does that include the graduate report?
Yes.
Because I don't recall getting anything this year to order that, but it always comes in during, it would have come in during all the insane madness anyway, but I'm afraid I might have missed it.
It will probably not be available until the October 14th date of when we're making that public.
But it would go through this system, so no more paper copies coming out? Okay.
You may get a paper copy as well, but you should be able to access this online report in the online reporting system. Okay. If not, let me know, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. This is, oh, let me, so I'm gonna move on to online testing.
I'm sorry, Iris, can you answer a couple more questions?
Sorry, I didn't.
The chat?
I am not looking at the chat, sorry guys.
I know, but can I?
No,
okay,
shoot,
so
yeah.
Do you, how do we obtain a copy of the trusted agent for managing access? The email sent over the spring, can we still assign?
So I can help provide that to a superintendent. I have to do some specific work to do that. And, there's a couple other people at ACT who can do that. You don't have to call in the 800 number to do that. We can give that information to you and have specifically a couple people who can help us with that.
And it must be sent to the superintendent. The superintendent has to sign. Okay.
Yes.
Then a follow-up to Lori's question. So no more CDs for data upload, but rather it's to be pulled from the ACT Success. And
Correct.
Will there be a webinar available for this?
Yes.
On using the new.
We are working on that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, and Josh, just let me know. Get a hold of me, okay?
Thanks, Iris.
Yes. Okay. Online testing, I just want to, this is kind of a reminder, simply because we didn't get to test in the spring, and it's been so long since we've talked about anything about the process of doing all of these things. We're going to go in more detail when we do some webinars with test administration in January and February, but I just wanted to remind you that proctor caching is not required to do online testing with ACT, but we strongly recommend the proctor caching, the mock administration, and the browser lockdown if you're going to test online. And you can look at that at the Pearson Access Next online manual and technical guide. That's if you want a successful administration online, those are the things you're going to need to do. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, great. Thank you, sir. ACT accommodations and EL supports. We talked about the new front door in the system. If you have any questions about access to TAA, let me know. And accommodations will be available for the spring test, and that's going to open November 1st. So we'll move on to test dates. So in the past, we've called them initial, makeup, and emergency. We're not calling that anymore. And last year we called them both. We called them test window 1, which is initial, and we called them, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to call them Nebraska's test window 1, Nebraska window 2, Nebraska window 3. And so we are going to, at ACT, that's what we call them. So we're going to connect it to your state. So you'll have test window 1, test window 2, and test window 3. And Jeremy already kind of went through this a little bit. There's online testing dates, there's accommodation test windows, and standard paper test dates. Please note in the second test window that Tuesday test date is the Tuesday after Easter. So when you're looking at your schedules, I know that is concerning in a lot of districts, so I just want to make note of that. You can, if you choose, let's say you choose test window 1 as a district to do majority of your testing, and you decide to do paper, you can do makeup with online testing in that test window, in that test window 2 and test window 3. You can also do the paper makeups for test window 2 and test window 3. So you have lots of choices there. If you have specific questions, if you have any questions or concerns about those dates, just send me a quick email. While I'm talking about that, I know a lot of people try and call me, and sometimes that goes through, and sometimes it doesn't go through to my my new office phone. So if you've called, please just send me a quick email update as well, just to make sure that I know that you called and left a message for me. That would be the best way. Or you can send me an email and ask me to call you. Melanie has a question about testing on Friday for, I don't know what your question is. I don't understand your question, Mel. Testing on Friday for.
Yes, sorry, I had my phone muted. So I was looking at the dates for your accommodations, and then I was looking at what I had written down. We picked the April 6th date, but I had accommodations only from April 6th to 8. And if you go to the previous slide, you have 6 to 9. Right. And then I had 13 through 15, and you have 16.
Yeah. So it looks like you're looking, those two choices were the online standard and accommodations are the 6th through the 8th and April 13th through the 15th, but the accommodation paper would be April 6th through the 9th and the 12th to the 16th.
Okay, I have your slide deck, so I just need to remember what slide this is.
It is.
Thanks.
Number 36.
Thank you.
36, yes.
All righty. So ACT online prep opened this week. Emails were sent to those people who should have access to the login to sign your students up for that. Schedule of events for spring test date will be coming in November, maybe very late October. It is all determined on a few outstanding dates that we need to schedule, and we will get it to you as soon as possible, and we'll let you know that when that is posted. Let's see. So PA Next will open on November 2nd, which I guess is a Monday. My apologies on the dates. Managed participation will be due on 11:30. Now, managed participation, let me just reiterate for those who don't know, that's when you tell us whether ACT, you're telling them whether you're testing paper or online, and which of those two test windows that you want your materials in. That is the most important part. So this way you don't have to order materials for your initial test date. Okay, so that's what managed participation is all about, is tell us what test window and how you want your materials. Okay, pre-ACT in the spring, that information about the test dates and ordering will be coming to you in January or February. Okay, I think we got that covered. We're gonna have some, you wanna move forward, please?
Yep.
Thank you. The webinars, ACT will have 3 webinars. We'll have an accommodations one, probably mid-November, and we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. And then we'll have 2 test administration webinars where Olivia Lenahan, who is really well versed in ACT and all the little tiny details, even more so than I am. She and I work together really hard to make sure we cover all the things that you'll need for the spring test. We'll talk about forms, we'll talk about reporting, we'll talk about everything that you need to know on that. So please keep an eye for these. We don't have dates exactly yet, but when we do, we will have that available and the links to all the registrations. And we'll post that in the ACT Nebraska website, but also the NDE website. Okay, we're gonna move on to Pearson Access next. Once again, managed participation deadline. So this is just a screenshot of an old participation, but it tells you whether you're testing paper. So if you are testing, let's say you're testing paper and you want to use online for makeup, don't choose an online test window date. Just choose the paper information and then you can schedule online later. So I think sometimes it gets very confusing with this. When you use the online as makeup, you are allowed to do that. I just want you to clarify that when you're looking at the managed participation. Okay, yeah, we can move forward, thanks.
Sorry.
No, you're good. ACT online prep and pre-ACT. Those are your choices again this fall. We did have a rise in requests for the ACT online prep. And I think that has everything to do with remote learning and trying to provide the best solutions for your students. And if you have any questions about those things, please let me know. Do you have anything you want to add on that, Jeremy?
No, I just, everybody that based on your choice, you're going to get emails based on your choice, whether you wanted to do either one of those options. So just look for those emails. And if you have questions, Iris is the one that can answer them for you.
And Jeremy, your mic is acting up again.
Yeah.
Say, I can't understand, couldn't hear that.
Jeremy's mic was acting up, so there was
you can
some static.
only choose one of those options. You can't choose both.
Okay, we're going to talk about fee waivers. ACT fee waivers. Nebraska students used 77% of the fee waivers that they distributed, that they requested in 2018-2019. Last year, 2019-2020, only 70% of the fee waivers were used. 30% went unused, 7% more than the year before. So approximately last year, we had 21,000 students who would have qualified for fee waivers. The state only requested 3,334, and of those 3,334, about 2,300 were used. So if you have any questions about how to use fee waivers, I have some information about what it covers. Next slide.
Yeah, so and Iris, I'm just going to jump in right here because just because of time. If you're not familiar with fee waivers, check it out. It's a great opportunity that ACT provides for students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. They can test multiple times. They get a lot of other resources too. And it's really a great service that ACT provides. We want to just make sure people are getting the word out. And we want people to use that. So if you have questions about it, if you've never heard of it, if you don't know how to get qualified for it or how to put those waivers in, let Iris know. There's information here in the PowerPoint for you. But I think this is just something that we want to stress. It's a way that we can reach for equity. Yeah, I think the movement from the pre-ACT to online prep was because of the pandemic for the most part. Yep. Okay, important reminders. Oh, this is going to be bad. Just let me click through these so they're all on the screen. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay, so bookmark your ACT Nebraska website. I am going to post that here for everyone. If you don't have it posted yet in your bookmarked in your computer, please do so. That's where you're going to get the best, most recent information, a lot of good stuff. Continue to pay close attention to which forms you're using and which window they are assigned. That got a little messy this fall, so I'm hoping that it all works out. Get your accommodations requests in as early as possible. I highly recommend at least this first semester. If you can get them in before the end of the semester, then you have time to do reconsiderations if need be. I know you can't get everybody done the first semester because you might have somebody move in the second semester, but if you can get the majority of those accommodations done earlier, you're going to be better off. Avoid non-college reportable testing unless you absolutely have to. Don't hesitate to call me or email me is actually better right now. We're asking that all third year cohort students take the NSCAS ACT or the alternate. So ACT does not have an alternate test. Just everybody. So I just want to clarify that because I think that's sometimes that's a misunderstanding. The alternate test is with another vendor. We do have ACT with accommodations though. Okay.
And all third year cohort students are expected to do one of those two tests, right? So either the ACT or the NSCAS alternate. If a student qualifies for the alternate, NSCAS alternate, it's in a different system, you have to get it from a different place.
And plan early for your students who are in external programs. I know they move around constantly, but whatever you can do to reach out to the external programs and make a game plan on how you're going to test those students. I think everybody, it's less stressful for everyone. Please continue to read your ACT emails, those manuals and supplements that go along with that you get in the spring.
And I'm gonna reiterate here, if you have questions, contact Iris. That's what she's here for. She does a wonderful job. You can ask anybody that's worked with her. She goes out of her way to try to make things easy for you and will help you however she can. She should be your first contact as far as ACT issues, and she will do her best, which is often more than good enough to take care of your problems. So I can't stress that enough. She mentioned that she often gets emails with, sorry, I'm bothering you, or sorry, I'm calling you. You don't need to apologize to her or any of our staff. That's what we're here to do, is help you. We would rather you call us and ask a question or email us and ask us a question than making a mistake or making it difficult later down the road. We still want you to read everything and get that information, but we are here to make your lives easier and to give you the best service that we can. So please just let us know, Iris for ACT and the rest of the staff for all of their different pieces. You can see the thanks coming in for Iris
Yeah, I
right
see
now
that.
because we I'll mention this really quick. Just so Iris is the first of her kind as being an on-site liaison from ACT, but now they are doing that on a regular basis. Iris has set a path for other states, and they are other states are demanding somebody like Iris. We know they won't get as good a person as Iris. She was also highlighted in a recent ACT newsletter, internal newsletter for her work as well, because she does a great job of trying to make everybody's lives better and easier around it. So thank you.
I want to say thank you too for your patience this fall. It's not been easy for any of us to try and figure out the path to helping you in this remote situation. And so thank you very much for your patience with me. You know,
yeah. I'm just going to mention this really quick about misadministrations and prohibited behaviors around ACT. And I mentioned this last year, but I'm going to do it again because we didn't have a testing session. Tell your kids what you're looking for, what the proctors are looking for. We have too many students getting zeros on the ACT because they work ahead and behind, or they do something else they shouldn't do. Proctors have to turn those things in. They don't want to risk their teaching license. They don't want to risk their professional ethics. So make sure your students know that they're looking for those types of things. Because if they know that you're looking for it, they're less likely to do it, right? And so I think that's the biggest one, is working ahead or behind. Students, they want the best score possible. Well, a good way to get a 0 score on the ACT is by doing a prohibited behavior. And so make sure you let students know you're looking for that, and they will be less likely to do it. They'll be less likely to get a 0. You're less likely to get a 0. So just make sure they know what you're looking for and what you're going to be doing. ACT score replacements. We are still going to do ACT score replacements. I'm not sure how many students will have a previous score that qualifies for this. Remember, this is mostly for students that get very high scores. So if you have a student that's already got a 36 and they don't want to test again, I get that. And so that's what this is for students that get very high scores and don't want to test again. If they could improve their score, we really want them to test again. You have to have high enough scores in enough areas to qualify for this. Somebody might want to put the link to that score replacement form in the chat. But this, only a few students every year qualify for this, but it is a good alternative for students that have high scores and don't want to test again. So that is available to you. Parental consent, it's the same as what we were doing for last year. We have to get parental consent because we're requiring the students to do this. Hopefully you had time to think ahead on this and be thoughtful about it, about getting this information and getting this parental consent for your students in the 3rd year cohort. If you haven't, there's an example letter that you can use and form that you can use. You don't send those in. We'll be following the same processes that we had established for last year moving forward. And here is Iris. Here's some of the additional resources, including Iris's email. If you don't have that, you should have it. It should be on your speed dial, right? Whatever the equivalent of that is for email. Yeah, so here's that information. If you have questions, please let her know. So ACT and COVID distance recommendations, yeah, they're going to still be putting out, I assume, COVID recommendations as far as distance for students and those types of things. I can't imagine that those are going to change. Their guidance around that is going to change. Districts need to use local, state, federal, and ACT recommendations as far as testing students in the pandemic. So follow whatever's going on locally, pay attention to that and do the best you can to follow those guidelines. There are differences between requirements and guidelines, but you pay attention to those and do your best, okay? If you have specific questions, let Iris know. we're going to move on to NSCAS alternate. I'm going to fly through a lot of information here because we are going to run out of time, and I want to make sure there's time for questions at the end. So NSCAS alternate, same 7-week test window. You have 6 weeks to do the primary amount of testing. The last week is intended for makeup only. You can do makeup earlier than that, but you should not be scheduling your test for that last week to get them started. You should be done. You should be started and mostly done before that last week. That last week should be just wrapping stuff up, finishing up the makeup window. So that the same 7-week window is there. Remember, alternate assessment is based on the alternate assessment flag, and it's entered by district data managers. Checking this is very useful to everybody. This is one of the biggest error areas. Say that 5 times fast. So you can't, or at least I can't. Areas that we have is that that alternate assessment flag is not marked. You should be using NDE guidance to determine who qualifies for the alternate assessment. It's only those students with significant cognitive disabilities, only about 1% of the students. You do not receive materials, you print those, or you do it online. And proctors input answers into the online system. So you have to make sure you have that available from DRC, right? DRC is our alternate assessment vendor, and it's done one-on-one. Insight, there's going to be recorded proctor training available. There's also practice opportunities or the online tools training. Those are in the Secure Insight, and you're able to print those off or do that electronically, so students have an opportunity to practice. And this year, once again, same slide as last year, census field testing. We expect all students that are qualify for alternate in grades 5, 8, and the 3rd-year cohort to test science field test. Once again, we're testing the test, making sure that we can make an operational test hopefully for next year. We are going to have to put in a waiver again. We've been just over the 1% threshold for the state. We're going to plan on putting a waiver request in. When we put that out, you will be able to make a statement. Last year we got no comments, and no comments isn't necessarily bad, but it's not bad if we would have a few positive statements to help our waiver get through, to say that this is a good thing that we continue to get a waiver as we work towards getting to that 1%. We are really close, and we're going to keep working on it. This year, because of not testing last year, there are some, we need less information from you. Let's put it that way. You're going to get a letter, you're going to get an email request from Sharon Heater. Turning in your justification is still required from everybody. Just because you're under the 1% doesn't mean you don't turn this in. Everybody has to turn this in. If you follow the directions and do it, it's a lot easier on Sharon. It's a lot easier on you, because we'll not contact you as many times and keep asking for this information. So please turn this in. Pay attention to it. It is easier than last year because there's less information that we need because we didn't test. But please, when you get this email, pay attention to it, get it done, get it back in. We have to have this. We don't have a choice to get the waiver. We have to be able to get, we have to collect this information. There's no way around it. So just please fill it out, do it. Even if you have no alternate students, you still have to tell us that, okay? Alternate assessment, new resources. We've already talked about these resources. We will email you when we've posted those, and so that you can make sure they get to teachers in your district. So those are coming soon. NSCAS General. Okay, guys, I'm lost. Am I still doing this? I think I am, aren't I? Yeah, okay, I'll just keep going.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. These are the same dates I already put up for you. This is for the phase 1 pilot, the science field test, and the alternate, the same windows, just repeated again for you. These are technology supported devices for the NSCAS general or the phase 1 pilot. So check out your system, your device requirements. Hopefully your IT people are already on top of this, but here's that information for you. If you have questions, you want to talk to NWA about this, and calling their customer service is the best way to do that around tech support specifically. Most of the time, our office cannot help you in this area. Most of the time, this is going to be a call to NWA's customer service. So this is just a repeat from last year. There are resources available. There's an item type sampler for science that's available if you want to look at the format of the field test for science. There's pre-assessment information available, and there is also professional learning support. So around the science field test, so we already sent the deck, the slide deck to Dax. You should have it in your email. So hopefully that's there already. But there are resources available for you to practice on, for your teachers to expose students to format. So please make sure you're using those item type samplers. NSCAS Science specifically, we have the pre-pilot that we used 2 years ago now. Those are still available to you, and here are the links to those. Also, those new tasks that we worked on are going to be coming out soon. Those are going to be even better than these are because they're newer, they're higher quality overall because we've learned a lot. And so really those new tasks are coming soon, but if you want to, you still have access to these older examples as well. And I'm just going to click through these because those are the links to those. There are a lot of, that's not good. Okay. There are a lot of additional resources. That is a link up at the top on our science transition page. It still says transition on it because we're still trying to get to there. There's a lot of material that we put out, including achievement level descriptors, guidance on scheduling, test blueprints, and all of those pieces. So if you haven't paid attention to that or you're new, those resources are there. If you have questions about it, please let us know. Rhonda, you got 2 seconds to do skills and everything.
Yes, hello, well, welcome. I'm Rhonda True, and just a little bit about skills. This is a grant that's coming to an end, but it has been utilized for its tools and templates and processes to develop the classroom science formative task repository that you are going to see come out here shortly. We brought in teachers to do the work, and the work really sparked from this grant right here. And we are working on processes to support the development of high quality tasks, not only at the classroom level, but at statewide summative level. So this, like I said, this grant's coming to an end. This website has all of these resources, and I just want to put a plug out there because this is really hard to write three-dimensional science tasks. And so this grant has provided a professional learning development series. It's like literally the toolkit with the, actually with the PowerPoints, the agendas, whatever, for those professional developers to use to lead how you go about doing this. And then there are assessment literacy modules in there, as well as if you want to take a look at your assessment system, whether it be science, ELA, or math, there's a self-evaluation protocol. But the skillspartners.org website has all of those resources. Next slide. So good news is that that grant is coming to an end December 6th, but we were just funded for an additional grant to support the work in science, and it's called Stackable Instructionally Embedded Portable Science Assessments. It's almost a $3 million grant that will involve 8 states, which we're really excited about, and some really very effective partners. And it's a 3-year timeline there. And the really great thing about this grant is it will really take the resources from Skills, as well as another grant that was happening. And we're going to develop instructionally embedded assessments at grades 5 and 8 and engage teachers in more assessment literacy and really connect curriculum, instruction, and assessment and help educators evaluate students' learning and just make appropriate instructional decisions. So it will be more of a connection to assessment, to curriculum, and also to instruction. So I'm excited about this, and we've just been funded, and the press release is coming out this week. So very excited. Nebraska will be the lead state on that. All right.
Yeah, so I got a lot of chatter going. It was, okay, two pieces. Rhonda, awesome. This is great news, everybody. This is going to be an awesome work that this grant is going to fund. We got great partners, 8 states, a lot of big names. Jim Pellegrino's involved in this work. A lot of great work is going to come out of this. Rhonda and Trudy deserve a big shout out for their work of writing up this grant and getting this grant to fund this work, and it's going to be awesome. I'm going to click back here because there looks like there's a lot of questions here, and I'm going to get some clarification on this. It does say iPad Proctor Station, iPad's not fully supported. I don't think that means that you can't use them. I think Allie's actually trying to get the information for us about this right now. iOS 9 through 13 is supported, so those are iPads for your student devices. So there is no reason that you shouldn't be able to use iPads for student experiences. I'm going to find out what that means, not fully supported on iPad, and let you know. Yeah, the slide deck is the presentation. That is correct.
Jeremy,
yes.
iPads are supported for students. It's the proctoring.
Right.
So students can use the iPad.
Right, but we need to find out what not fully supported is for iPads for Proctor Station, because some districts only have iPads for their proctors, is what I'm hearing. So this is all in SCAS general, right? That's done through NWA. So this would be the phase 1 pilot and the science field test is what this is. Okay, so students are definitely supported for that. And for devices, student devices, iPads are supported. For proctors, maybe not fully supported based on this. Usually when they say that, it still works, but we will get clarification on that for you, okay? Everybody good now? I know that caused panic for some of you.
Yeah.
Which we don't like. Panic is bad.
Okay. This piece, I'm even probably more excited than the multi-million-dollar grant, but I'm very excited about that. But brought teachers in this summer, as Jeremy spoke about.
Sorry.
Well, we had 50-some participants this summer, and we repurposed the work from state summative. We shifted and we did state formative classroom formative science tasks. And we have people from districts, ESUs, and NWA involved. And Ed Count, who is the lead vendor for the skills grant, led this. And we had 1 week in June and 1 week in July. And really, I saw that said 24 formative class were created for grades 5 and 8, but I think we have 27 for grade 5. So we are going to have a repository, a bank of classroom assessment tasks that are aligned to every standard, all of the 5th grade standards, all of the 8th grade standards. And the grain size will be actually at the indicator level. So if teachers are wanting to tap in and find out evidence, if their kids can show them evidence about this indicator related to that standard, and all the indicators are at least 3-dimensional, they'll be able to tap in and give their students a task. They'll be in the repository hopefully really soon. We're just going through them right now to make sure they're at the absolute highest quality. And not only will teachers receive the tasks, There'll be multiple tasks for every standard, but they will also receive all the design tools that the Nebraska educators who came in and worked on these, the design tools that they utilized, including the unwrapping or unpacking tool, and including the task specifications tool of thinking about all the pieces that go into making this task. So if teachers are like, I don't want that task, I want to shift it a little bit, they can go into the design tools. It's already the standard, which includes the indicator. It's already been unpacked or unwrapped for them. And there will be a task specification tools with a menu of ways that they could rewrite the task. And so all of those things will be in there for them, as well as we will have learning modules that teachers can go through on their own that have been scripted and talked over, so they can listen to them on how do I do this if I want to do my own. So it's going to be just like a little house of professional learning, as well as the actual tasks there. And it will be in a Google Drive situation, and your DACs will receive DACs, and Science Cadre and so forth will receive information about it when it's available. We want all science teachers to have access to this, but they are only written for 5th and 8th at this time. It doesn't mean science shouldn't be taught in all grade levels, but we started in one area, and this is the grade levels that we selected. Okay.
Yeah, Betsy, I can't agree more. I think these are going to be game changers in a lot of ways, as far as helping teachers and students understand how we're going to test the three-dimensional science standards. And I think the resources that, so we brought really the skills grant piece together with the summative piece with NWA that we're doing, and put those together to try to create resources that are going to be very helpful for teachers if they want to create their own assessments, quality assessments, understanding where their students are as far as these three-dimensional skills. We don't have a specific date yet, Jen, as far as when these materials are going to be out. We have people working on them right now. They are very close to being done. As soon as they are available, we will put an email out and let everybody know. Yeah, I don't want to commit any more than that right now, but to say as soon as possible, they are really close. And so we'll let you know when they are available, because we know teachers want them. The teachers that worked on them really want them. They know how high quality they're going to be. I think the teachers worked super hard and created a lot of good, not only good assessments, but also additional resources to support this work. And we think that it is going to be very beneficial. Once again, this wasn't a possibility until COVID hit, because we were able to pivot those resources that would have been for summative and change them for this. And I think we're always trying to get silver linings out of stuff, and I think this might be one of the silver linings once you see these resources. I think it's going to be a big deal. So making sure they get in your science teachers' hands are going to be beneficial, I think, all the way around. That's where I am right now anyway. At least because I keep hearing those people that worked on them talk about it. And so I'm excited about making those available to you as well.
I just wanted to add, Jeremy, that, the field across the state, science teachers are calling for, not only do we need some high quality tasks, but how to score them is something they're asking for. So these will all have rubrics that the educators developed, as well as an exemplar response. Yeah. So that will be just really helpful to the field, so teachers can see, like, well, what is the expectation of the evidence at a 3? What would a 2 be? What would a 1 be? And I do want you to know that after all the educators wrote these, all of these went through extensive reviews, as what for high quality, for science content, and for accessibility. And then teachers made revisions to them based on the reviews, and then we're going through them one last time for a review, because we want them to be really high quality. So yeah, the educators were amazing. The assessment literacy that came from that, they said that they understand not only the standards better, they understand what goes into an assessment, how you guarantee you get valid evidence out if you use this type of approach, because you have to think about all those components before you write the task. So, okay, next slide.
A lot of good work that was done this summer. We had teachers and staff working super hard to make really high quality tasks for everybody across the state. And like Rhonda said, they were reviewed multiple times. They probably don't get quite as much attention as the summative does before it goes out and into the system, but it almost got as much. We did bias reviews and everything on this. We tried to make sure they were very close to the same quality as our summative test. And so hopefully you find them very useful as they come out.
Right.
That's okay. Don't spend a lot of time on this, but
I won't spend a lot of time on this one, but NAEP is happening. Jeremy already said that. There it is, math and reading grades 4 and 8. The NAEP window has been extended 2 weeks, but I'll be honest, those last 2 weeks, those 2 weeks in March there, those will really just probably be used for like makeup situations in case there is a COVID outbreak at your school or your district, and there is a possibility to come back in those last 2 weeks and test. So just know that. There are 54 districts and 100 schools being sampled this year. It's much smaller. I've already reached out. Superintendents are aware. Principals have been notified already twice if they haven't completed My NAEP for their building yet and chosen their test coordinator. I'm really pushing districts to get this done, or schools to get this done early this year. And currently I have 60 out of the 100 schools who are already registered in My NAEP and have their provide school information completed. The reason why, once Nebraska has 80% of their schools registered, then schools will start being notified of a 2-week window when the assessment might be given during that 2-week window. And you get to select your first, second, and third choice in that 2-week window when you would like the test to be given. In the past, NAEP really just said, here's your date. But this year there's a little more flexibility. So I'm trying to get it done as soon as possible so Nebraska can get our top choices. So thank you to all those people, those who have responded. Next thing I've been seeing in chat I want to answer is I'm uploading your sample of students, whether it be grade 4 or grade 8. I'm just uploading all of your students in those grades into My NAEP in November. And then basically December 7th, your sampled students at those buildings will be available for your test coordinator to see. And then they just need to verify. They need to verify if those students need accommodations. They need to verify if those students are sitting in their seats or if they're remote learners. Remote learners will not take NAEP. They might be asked to complete a questionnaire, but they will not take NAEP. Only the students who are sitting in person. So I'm trying to take a little bit of that burden off the districts and the schools. So all they have to do is go in, look at their sampled list and say, yep, we've got this student. Nope, they're not here. Yep, they're a remote learner. There are choices like, nope, they're even homeschooled, like they're not in our building anymore. So yeah, so that's what's happening with NAEP. And I will send an email to all of your test coordinators, CCing your building principals on December 8th, letting them know you can now see your sample. Get in, here's some things you need to do just to remind them. And if you have any questions, email me. I will be more than willing to visit with you or give you a call.
Rhonda, how long did NAEP test take?
NAEP test, they say, is about a 2 to 3 hour. That's from the point of handing out the iPads. They all do it on an iPad, which NAEP brings in, and they'll bring in the staff. So it says 2 to 3 hours to administer. Some kids take reading, some kids take math. They sit in the same classroom, it doesn't matter.
And they have done some things. They have made some changes. They've reduced the sample size. They've made it so students don't have to take both tests. They only take one test. So they have done some things to make it better and to make it easier. It's still not going to be easy, right? And we know that, and we apologize for you. They will follow, and NAEP people will follow the guidelines for your buildings, correct?
Yes, NAEP protocols, they will be tested. Those field staff will be tested every single week. They will wear PPE, which includes a mask, a shield. They will clean all the devices between each use. Absolutely. They will follow your lead as well. So if you have any further questions, just let me know. We can talk through it. I know some people are just, another concern or question is, how do I separate students in my building? So we can chat about that further. And they actually call your building. One person from NAEP, not me, will call right before the assessment and go over things. And if there are concerns like that, you should let them know. But they are going to send field staff, more field staff to your building, and they can come back multiple days so that you can have those smaller groups. Because we understand you're not going to possibly move kids across groups because you're keeping them separate. So they may need to send in more field staff. They're saying they can do up to 8 sessions of NAEP in a building a day based on the field staff numbers that they're looking at. So that's all I know for now.
Very good. Thank you, Rhonda. If you have additional questions about NAEP, please drop Rhonda an email. She'll do her best to get the answer or find the answer. We're going to do NSCAS interim map growth information really quick. Most of you have this information. You've got it from Dan Henderson or other resources. If you want to look at remote testing, that is available to you for map growth. Some districts have used it, some districts haven't. We totally get that. It is an option for you, but please make sure you pay attention to all of NWA's guidance and the caveats about using that information and everything. There are potential problems with the data, but if you don't have any other data and you want this, totally makes sense. I would not hesitate to do this in a district, depending on the size of the district, the number of students and all of those types of things. If I thought my district could handle it, I wouldn't hesitate to do this. That being said, I know you're all in different places. Map growth norms, make sure you pay attention to the fact that the norms changed this last year. So looking at historical data becomes a little bit more difficult, and you have to take that into account. So make sure you're paying attention to that. We've offered some professional learning around that, and NWA has resources out there for this. This is a new availability. This was out there last year, but there is some Spanish versions of map growth now. So if you need those, make sure you're taking advantage of that. Not going to get into this very much, except to say using this the comprehensive combined data file, this could potentially help you clean some of this up and make processes easier for you. If you have questions, NWA's customer service can help you with a lot of these pieces if you have questions. They have new tools out about recovery after COVID interruptions this last year. So there's NWA has been one of the leaders about trying to understand impacts of COVID and trying to help provide resources and information about where your students are and how to get them moving forward again. So there are some great resources out there. Those are linked in the PowerPoint, so check those out. And this new tool here too to help set better goals. We know our students love to set goals and try to strive towards those goals on map growth. They have some new tools that can be used to help create even better goals. So this is out there, districts are responsible for this year for doing all of their rostering through their processes. NDE is not going to get involved in that for map growth specifically at this time. We'll see about the future where we are with that. Allie, you got like 3.5 minutes.
Got it. I can handle it.
Okay, I want to leave a little time for questions here before the end of the hour.
Yep, go ahead and click the next slide. So I'm Allie Martinez-Wilkinson. I am the professional learning lead for Nebraska with NWA, and I help coordinate the Certified Facilitator Program. So it's a network of 72 ESU staff, district staff, across the state, and to provide professional learning. The State Department has made a commitment to provide resources to make sure that we understand the assessment and that we're using the data accurately. So there are monthly e-newsletters that certified facilitators receive. There are 4 recorded pre-determined content webinars that we share, and then we have the 6 follow-up Q&A sessions. There's also a fall and spring. So some topics that are coming up, we will have an early literacy webinar coming up in November. Then we'll talk about the updated reports and the learning continuum in February. And then we'll do a research study in April, excuse me. And so that will be information that is pre-recorded, 30 minutes of content, and then we have a follow-up Q&A session. So any of those topics can be shared with districts. So contact your certified facilitator if you're interested. The workshops that we'll be talking about in just a minute are provided. We've gone to all remote. And so I appreciate the certified facilitators that attend 6 hours of training over Zoom. We try to keep them engaging, but we really wanted to make sure that they still got the content and felt comfortable with the content so they can present to your districts and to your buildings for your staff. The last document we have a save the date that just kind of looks at professional learning that we offer throughout the year. And so if there are topics or concepts that you want to work with your certified facilitators, contact them and they have some resources. On the next slide, we're talking about how this works in a balanced assessment system. So we have some specific assessment literacy workshops. We have a brand new quality classroom assessment. We know that everyone has had to pivot and really look at what data is available. And so that is a full day session on October 21st and 23rd. And then we have some repeated sessions from last year, triangulating data for instructional insights, applying those the classroom assessment standard.
Everybody, oh, most generally.
Please put yourself on mute if you're not on mute. Thank you.
Student-centered assessment literacy. So those are coming up. Again, contact your certified facilitators. And then we're starting to delve into the world of formative assessment. So we're offering workshops on clarifying learning and providing feedback in December, and then activating learners and eliciting evidence coming up in April. So those sessions are provided. If you go to the next slide. I can't say enough that if you're interested in these topics, contact that certified facilitator. They are able to bring a +1 with them to those opportunities. So any of those upcoming workshops, you are able to attend registration with your certified facilitator. And finally, I just wanted to mention the Writing with Evidence workshops that we started last year, working with ESU staff, NWA staff, NDE staff. It was a really great collaboration. So we are going to continue that. The caveat is that we know teachers are not going to be able to be released from their classrooms this year. Getting subs, I know, is just not going to happen. So we're going to
thank you.
Very targeted on how we get those resources to staff. Is it after school? Is it synchronous and asynchronous learning and making modules so that teachers still have access to those resources? So that is not lost. It's just going to be repurposed in how we need to get that done in this new era. So with that, that's a quick overview of professional learning and time for questions.
That was like 3.5 minutes. You really did do it. That is amazing.
I listened to you.
I was like, wow, she's actually going to make it. So NWA just put information about iPads and proctoring into the chat for you. So it was designed with a mouse and keyboard. So some of the functions might not work exactly as intended on an iPad, but they still think it will work for the most part. So check that information they just put there. And so we are at questions. You're able to come off mute at this time, and if you have a question, please give it to us or let us know. Give it to us. Don't give. Yeah, what? Just tell us what your question is, and we'll try to answer it. Or if you want to put that in chat, you're more than welcome. You don't need to raise your hand. You can just go ahead and come off mute and give us a question if you have it. We have about 8 minutes to answer some questions here. Before we're all done.
Lisa, did you get your question answered on map growth and student and through year?
I'm sorry, I had a student come in, so if it did get answered, no. Will most districts continue to do map growth throughout the year?
In the through year model or
Yes.
this year? So the
No,
through year model,
once it gets rolling.
yeah, once it gets rolling, you shouldn't need to do map growth because the through year model should replace it. You're going to get in the through year model, you're going to get interim type results like you're getting from map growth. They're going to look very similar, probably improved a little bit, and you're going to have very familiar results. Once it gets going, you should not need to have map growth and through the year. It should replace that. So it should be our own interim testing system that's very similar to map. And then we also get the summative information out of as well. So you should not need to do both once it gets going.
Jeremy, may I ask a clarifying question? This is Melanie.
Absolutely.
Well, as you said that, because I was thinking just what she was asking. However, I was under the impression that the through year testing, and you used to coin it as semi-adaptive because it's not quite as broad of a range as the interim growth map test is. So is the same true? Is it going to get broader as years go on? Or is it going to be limited to high end and low end and middle grade level standard?
Yeah, so I don't know that we fully understand exactly how adaptive it's going to be, right? So what I can tell you is the fall and spring version, or fall and winter versions of through year are going to be adaptive and go outside of grade level. For some, how adaptive the last session is in spring is going to be determined by how much the student by their previous test sessions, right? What we hope is that it is fully adaptive. We understand that it has to be adaptive enough to give reliable growth information. Otherwise, it doesn't do what we want it to do. That being said, there are some other limitations, but I'm fully confident that we can get a solution, a version, a model that gives us both the highly reliable, highly accurate growth information, and also gets us the information we need to determine the summative. It is our commitment of NWA and NDE that you still get interim type results and information back for each one of those administrations in a way that you're used to. We don't want to give you less than map growth does. We want to give you more than map growth does, right? And it really is an interim system that basically gives us summative results at the end, as opposed to a summative system that gives you some sort of interim.
Okay, that's awesome. And are you thinking it's still going to be the 60-minute moving forward?
I can't answer that right now.
Okay.
We've had to put a lot of things on hold that I would hope to have answers for because we didn't get to do the research pieces from last year. So we're still working on a lot of those pieces, and I might not have full answers until after this administration because we thought we were going to have more information at the end of in May, and now we have to wait till this coming May before we get some of that information. So one of the reasons there wasn't slides about 3 years specifically today is because there's a lot in the air. We're still moving forward. We have great people working on it. Geez, that sounded bad. Never mind. I won't tell you what I was thinking right there. We do have great people working on it, and they're fully committed to doing a great job. we just don't have all the answers. We don't know what next year looks like. Is that a phase 2 pilot, right? We call this one phase 1 on purpose, but we don't know if we have a phase 2 pilot or if it will be some other piece. We want to get to 3-year as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure that it does everything that we promise that it will do.
And follow up to that, I think Megan and Brianne has on there my question about continuing to do maps along with the special ed kids and the HAL kids, which I work with both of those in identification. If it's only adaptive within the grade level, what kind of help will that give us in identifying and being diagnostic with both of those groups?
It will be in the fall and winter at the very least. It will be adaptive outside of grade level.
Okay.
That is a guarantee, I hope.
And will the linking study, because I just went to the MAPS training yesterday, they talked about a linking study that showed a correlation between the two. So will that be what gives us an equivalent RIT score to what our new through-year testing will be?
No,
is that comparable?
Yeah, so we will have RIT scores so you're going to have RIT scores from the through-year adaptive. That's going to be determined through pieces like that linking study, but also the research we're doing this year in the phase 1 pilot. And that's why it's so important that we get as many participants as possible so that we get the best data to base those decisions on and that information on.
And so next year is kind of going to be a growing year, and we might have some schools doing both tests.
I don't want to commit to anything. It's yet to be determined, and we're going to have to determine where we feel comfortable and what we can do. Right? I don't want to commit to anything right now because I just don't have the answers yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Great questions. I wish I knew the answers. I really do.
Dixie, would you like to come off mute and ask your question, please?
I'm just going to say, everybody, thank you very much for being here. I'm going to stop predicting that things are going to take me less time than I think they are. I'm just not going to say anything from now on because every time I do that, I'm wrong. I think Lane Carr wore off on me because he always says that and hardly ever actually does it. I want to thank you for your time. This is recorded and we're going to post it so you can share it with others if they need to hear this information. I will stay on as long as I need to continue answering questions. You're welcome to hang out with us and do that. I know some of you probably have other meetings that you need to go to. We will continue to record all of these questions and if put it into documentation if we need to send that out. But we'll answer the questions now as they come up. So you're welcome to hang out with us as long as you have time. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, Dixie appears to have left, so.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see your name. There you go. Please ask.
Okay, well, my first question is, am I understanding right, absolutely no individual student reports with the spring NSCAS?
For the phase 1 pilot, which is the general assessment, there are no individual student reports. For the alternate, there'd be ISRs, and the students that take the ACT will get their ISRs from ACT.
Okay, but 3 through 8, there will be none.
There will be no ISRs. You'll get results in a data file, but you will not get ISRs, no. Because those basically they're preliminary results, right? They are not fully vetted results. And when we tell you what is going to be in that data file, we'll give you some guidance as far as how you should use it, how reliable they are, what we think they should be used for. In general, like I said, you're better off using map growth and those types of tests, other tests that you have to inform instruction and program decisions.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Other questions, anybody else?
Megan had a question.
That way go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, will it be that way in the fall for the through year? Are you hoping that we will have some sort of scores. Otherwise, we'll want to look at doing a map growth test in
Yeah,
the fall.
and you'll know that far in advance, right? So if you're not going to get scores and you're going to want to have some sort of interim results, you would know whether you needed to do both to get that information or not. That decision will be made well in advance so that you can plan for your fall and what that looks like. Absolutely. I'm not going to say what it's going to look like right now because I don't know, but I understand the need for that data. And so if you can't rely on that for being there for the through year, then definitely we would let you know that so you can make plans to make sure you got them through map growth, for instance.
And if we did get the scores in the fall, how soon after testing will we get them? Will it be, because we get them
it should
like
be the
next day
immediate
and then,
yeah, it should be the immediate turnaround type of thing, right?
okay,
That being
so the
said,
next
we're
24 hours?
still yeah, that's the intention for the through year is it comes back just
Perfect.
like map growth does. That being said, we're still determining all of those pieces and how preliminary that is or not and everything. So, but that is the intention, that it would work just like map growth as far as that 24-hour turnaround and being able to provide you results almost immediately.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Jeremy, this is Dixie again, and I must have really missed some kind of boat. Where or what is the through-year assessment? Is that another type of assessment offered through the state, or what
Yeah,
is?
so last October, we announced that we were moving to the through-year adaptive model. At that time, we announced that it was going to be on, we wanted to move to it in 21-22, so that would be for next year. And basically what the through-year adaptive is, and I'll give this short version, is basically we're taking map growth and NSCAS and combining them so you only have to do one test to get all of those results. And so it's a hybrid between the two. And NWA is working with us to make that happen. So basically you'd be able to do interim testing 3 times a year. And then we would be able to pull those summative results from that, as opposed to having a different test at the end of the year for summative results. Trudy, would you put in the link to the innovation page? Dixie, there is the presentation I gave last October. It's a little bit dated, but it does give a good overview of what our intentions are for that. So if you didn't get that information last year, this would be a good place for you to get an overview of that. Does that answer your questions? I'm sure that causes you to have many more questions, but does that give you enough to at least say what we're talking about?
Well, so obviously we didn't get signed up for that. So we are map testing twice a year and then NSCAS at the end.
Yeah.
So basically we're just putting our own data together, and the through year option would put it together, put the data together for us. Oversimplified?
Yeah, maybe a little oversimplifying it. So we're going to encourage you to map test 3 times a year, and then we would pull the summative decisions based on that data is what it would look like. But it's called NSCAS. It's going to be called, it's the 3-year adaptive model. We haven't named it necessarily. But basically you'll have interim testing 3 times a year, and then we will harvest that data and then make a proficiency decision on your students about based on that information.
So it's not a separate test or separate site that I have to go to.
That is correct, right? It basically takes map growth and NSCAS summative and smushes them together to make it one thing.
Okay, so what I really need, the piece I need to add, we just, did our fall map. We'll do winter map. And then typically we did not do a spring map before the NSCAS.
Which is going to be great, because all you're going to do is do spring map growth essentially, and you'll be done. So instead of so if you were doing both in the spring, you'd only have to do one. Since you weren't doing map growth, you'll just give map growth essentially in the spring, and you won't have to give NSCAS. You only have one test to give still.
Okay, and where is that option going to be?
It's going to be in the same place map growth is now.
Okay. All right. Got it.
So it's basically, so what it looks like is you're going to basically do map growth 3 times a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're done. You don't have a separate test.
Okay. So it's just not called NSCAS anymore then?
Well, it's going to be called, we haven't named it yet, Dixie. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
got it.
It's going to be NSCAS something.
Okay.
We just haven't got to that point.
Okay.
The whole thing will be called NSCAS. Instead of map growth, it'll be NSCAS something 3 times a year, but it's very similar to map growth. You'll get the same type of data that you get from it now.
Okay.
Hey, Jeremy.
It's going to be good, I promise.
Jeremy, this is Brian Haney. I've got a question for you. I promise
Sure.
I'm not trying to be difficult about the NSCAS through-year model, but
yeah,
the question I have and my teachers keep having is the proficiency and our kids who are proficient.
Sure.
Do they have to? And if you don't have the answer, just knowing when the decision will be made, but
yeah,
if they're proficient in the fall, we know that we know we're going to have kids at our school who are proficient in the fall.
Sure, you're going to have students that are testing way outside of grade level above, right? Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
So what does their assessment look like for the rest of the year?
Right. So if they could demonstrate proficiency on enough of the indicators in the fall, then their test in the winter and spring continues to be adaptive like it would if it was just regular map growth, and they can still show growth, right? So basically we have to get in, and this gets really tough to say, because this is where a lot of the decision rules that will have to be determined will come into play, and we have to bring teachers in to help us make those decisions. But if a student is if you have a 4th grade student that is way more proficient at, it has 5th grade knowledge, has 6th grade knowledge, say they're at the 7th grade knowledge or above, right, in mathematics, there's no reason to go back and test them on that content again if they continue to show that they're growing and that they have it. So we're just going to look at getting them growth information down the line. They're not going to have to cover that same material again later on.
Right.
And
so I'm thinking I've got students in my building, elementary students who are, they're actually physically in 3rd grade. They're scoring
sure.
99, 98 percentile across the board. What does their assessment look like? So what you are saying is, though, they will still be required to take a winter and a spring. It will just look different.
Well, so required, I don't want to, so we have said up until this point, we continue to say the fall and winter are optional, right? And spring is the only one that is required. That being said, if they don't have the fall and winter, that's going to give them less opportunities to show proficiency, and it'll give them less opportunity to show growth. And that growth is going to be used in the accountability model. So you might want to do those things. So if you think about that 3rd grade student, what it looks like right now for map growth for that student in the winter and spring is the type of test that they will get in the winter and spring. And so it will continue to have them show how they're growing, if they're growing still, right? Or if they haven't topped out. And it may be able to be shorter. For one thing, right? So if they've already proved that they got it all, then maybe we don't have to, that test doesn't look as long. Maybe they just have to confirm that they're still doing it, right? Your teachers, you're asking really good questions. But I think, I don't know if the question is, do we have to test so much? And I guess that continuing to get information on how students are growing and what they need next is important no matter where a student is, whether they're below a level or above level. And trying to help those students continue to grow is something that we want to continue to do no matter where they are in their learning progression. So I think in general, we want to encourage you to continue to do those things. Requirements and those types of things, I think those are very hard things to determine doing a model that nobody's ever done before. But at the same time, we're trying to make the best decisions we can to make a model that is more instructionally relevant and timely than the current summative model is.
Okay, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's just when we had our initial rollout and we were informed of this, I think that at the meeting, someone had said last year, I can't even remember if it was the year before, that the winter assessment, if a kid was proficient in the fall, the winter assessment would be short and they may not have to take a spring assessment. So that's what I went back and told my teachers. And so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm consistent in what we're looking at doing.
Yeah, so I wouldn't put it that way, I guess, at this time. Is that possible? Maybe. In general, we want to capture growth. Like I said, one of the nice things about the accountability system will be that we'll be able to calculate growth multiple ways with that new system, and being able to capture that and being able to put it in the accountability system, we think is really important. So what I would say is that districts are going to probably be highly incentivized to take the fall and the spring. I can see some districts that might choose not to do the winter, but we were going to encourage you to do the winter because it's a check-in to where students are. If those tests can be shorter, that is potentially a possibility. I don't know that we're going to see that at the outset because of trying to make sure we have all of the data that actually confirms that and everything. It's a possibility, but once again, I don't want to make a commitment to that.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And for whatever reason, I thought everybody was going to be required to take it the 3 times. I didn't know that there was options on.
So we've said that it's optional in fall and winter. I think that there's going to be reasons why people are going to see fall as more or less required because they're not going to have an opportunity to get that growth score if they don't have it. That being said, districts could make different decisions if they want to. What we're hoping is that you find the data coming back so useful that you're not going to want to skip one of the assessments because you're going to have that be a part of how you do business, like most of our districts, like many of our districts do right now with map growth.
Oh, I agree. And that's why I thought that's why the state was going to the through the year model, was so that we had all of that and we were eliminating the map. And so I guess I'm surprised that it might be optional for school districts. And I certainly hope that nobody chooses that because of exactly what you've explained.
That's what I hope too, right? So I hope that everybody makes good choices, but we also are trying to also be respectful of local control and those types of things. That being said, the majority of our students are doing map growth multiple times a year, and so we would expect everybody to at least do that fall and that spring. The winter is a little bit more hit or miss. The spring is a little bit hit or miss because people are doing NSCAS and map growth. Now when they only have to do one, that shouldn't be a big ask for them to do that, obviously, since that one's going to be required.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're asking lots of really good questions. You really are. We're just doing something that hasn't been done before. So trying to give you all of the answers is just really difficult at this time. So we'll keep being as transparent as we can. That's what I can guarantee you, and trying to tell people what we know when we know it. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Megan Hammer.
Welcome.
Yeah, excuse me. Megan Hammer has a question about recommended use for the updated linking study now that we're moving to the phase 1 pilot? What would you recommend they use the updated linking study for?
I think you can still understand that in terms of, so we're still going to be using the same types of information to determine proficiency on the phase 1 pilot. And so using the linking study is a legitimate use of trying to predict where students are going to be on NSCAS with map growth. So I think you can use that and look at that. I would definitely support that that use of that. I don't know if that's a sufficient answer or not, but I would support using that linking study for prediction on how students would do on the phase 1 pilot. Okay. There, that's my answer.
Thanks.
Yep.
Jeremy, I had another question. We write several grants and they're tied to improvement on the MAPS scores. Sure. Yep. Will we be able to correlate that fairly easy, saying, okay, we said it was going to be this, but you guys use different qualifiers or ways of identifying? Is that going to be pretty
yeah, the intention is going into the through year, you'll get RIT scores that will be comparable with historical RIT scores. So that's the intention, is that you still get those RIT scores as you move forward. For instance, it's possible that we can give you a RIT score based on the phase 1 pilot this year. We're not committing to that yet, because we're trying to determine if we can give you that score or not. But that is the intention, is that you will continue to get RIT scores so that you can look at historical perspective as we move from MAP into through year, and as you move from potentially K2 MAP, if you're using that, and into 3rd grade through year. So we want those things to work as seamlessly as possible. NWA wants those things to work as seamlessly as possible. And so what I can say is, I know we're going to probably get something that works for you, so that for grants and those types of things, you could give comparable scores.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's a great question.
That's
Any
it
other
for the
questions?
Chat.
Okay, it for the chat. I have no idea what time it is. Is it time for, no, we got
It's
time.
12:20.
Anybody else? I got to feed the cat the treats because he's meowing. I don't know if you can hear him or not. Ow. Just. Lisa, I totally get that. My brain hurts too. That's a lot of information. I didn't think it was as heavy as it was, but it was kind of heavy. That part right before the break, I think, got us. I think maybe sometimes I don't understand how heavy things are, but it was plenty heavy.
A new DAC on top of it, so thank you. I know who to reach out to.
Absolutely, and don't hesitate. We really don't mind answering your questions at all. It's not taking us away from other things we should be doing. It's part of why we're here. So don't hesitate to ask. We would rather have you do that than waste time looking for an answer and those types of things, because we know you probably have 10,000 other hats that you're wearing, and that you need to get back to doing those other things. And so please do reach out to us. We don't mind.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Jeremy, I know I hate to ask about timelines. Is there a range of time that we will know if we can get a RIT score out of the phase 1 in the spring?
Yeah, I don't have a definitive date. Right now we have another technical advisory meeting scheduled. Well, it's not even scheduled. We're planning on scheduling it for the beginning of November to have continued conversations around that. Hopefully after that, we'll have a pretty good idea if we'll have that or not. It's one of the things that we think we can do. We're just trying. The TAC basically told me to stop promising things until I could guarantee them. And so I'm not promising that you'll get RIT score, but it is something that we're trying to do. And hopefully after that TAC meeting, I'll know whether I can promise or just hope.
I think that may affect people's testing schedule in the spring if they're questioning whether they should go ahead and do map growth and do the phase one.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. So one thing that I hope is that we have enough people that give both of those tests, because I think that data can help us as we continue to work through a year. But I do understand exactly what you were talking about. I could understand that people might say, hey, Mel, maybe we could cut down on testing if we're going to get that RIT score from this. So I totally get that. I know some people will say, regardless of what we get, we're going to focus on that map growth piece. So what I'll commit to is I'll try to get you that answer as soon as possible. Anybody else? I think we're questioned out. It's probably time to call it a day. Oh, I mean, go to our other meetings. That's what I really meant. Okay, for those of you still with us, still 74 people with us. I don't know if you're actually all sitting there and paying attention, or you just got it going on in the background or what, but thank you for being here. I saw 271 at one point today. We really appreciate you being here and working with us and being patient with us when we don't have the answers. So thank you. If you have questions, please let us know. We're going to start dropping off now. So thank you. Yeah, Josh, you were here early and you're staying late. Don't you have anything to do? I'm just giving you a bad time. I know, right? Getting information is important. Okay, everybody. Hey, Stacy, you're going to grab the chat, right?
If it comes automatically.
Okay.
I did.
Okay, because I have
I did as well.
Okay, Julie Myers would like it because she's driving right now. You can stop recording too. They don't need to hear all this at the end. So go ahead and stop that. But